Chapter 4404. However, no matter where Xiao Hua's consciousness went, there was still no news from Shenhua continent. Not to mention taking out the Jindan, he couldn't even take a look at it. However, just as Xiao Hua was about to die, there was a sudden change. Outside Xiao Hua's Niwen Palace, where the Buddha's body Buddha heart fire was, a transparent golden crystal that was even smaller than an ant appeared. It was the tiny godhead that Xiao Hua and his clone had condensed back on the primitive continent. The godhood that looked like a crystal was almost inaudible, but when the shadow of the sea god floated down, and the aura that resembled the will of heaven and earth landed, the entire crystal shone with an indescribable brilliance. This brilliance was different from ordinary brilliance. It didn't come from the crystal, but from various parts of the void. It was as if golden threads of light were suspended above the crystal. These threads of light were densely packed, and when the other end landed in the void, they disappeared without a trace. The crystal had many crystal faces, and there were even more that hadn't been revealed. These threads of light landed on different crystal faces. Some crystal faces had more threads of light, while others had fewer threads of light. At the same time, strange scenes appeared where the light threads touched the crystal surface. Patches of faith power faintly covered the crystal surface like clouds. Within the clouds of faith power, almost endless scenes of mountains and rivers, men plowing and women weaving, primordial phenomena, the collapse of the heavens and the earth, and other scenes flashed inexplicably. The crystal godhead wasn't supposed to be revealed, and it was only because the sea god's phantom approached that the crystal godhead was activated. However, as soon as the godlike figure of the sea god within the shell world approached the godhead didn't react at all. Instead, the figure of the sea god trembled and shattered into pieces. Almost at the same time, the figure of the sea god within the shell world was reduced to powder. Not only that, but the sea god's phantom was the power of the sea god's descendants that Beixiana had activated with the help of the sea god's sacred tool, the sea god statue. This kind of power was invincible because of its so-called divine power. This divine power was originally a pseudo-divine power. At this time, the pseudo-divine power collided with the embryonic form of the godhood. Although the embryonic form was not solid and had not truly taken shape, it was still a real godhood. How could low-level cultivators like Beixian and Xiao Hua understand the mysteries of this world? After the sea god's projection was shattered, the godhead's backlash, or rather, the godhead's fury, rushed towards the sea god's projection. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, everything within a radius of 10,000 miles that could sense the sea god's shadow, except for the sea god's statue, turned into nothingness. Then, in the space that was devoid of light, a 9-colored dot appeared on the forehead of the sea god statue. As soon as the 9-colored dot appeared, the entire sea god statue flowed with light, and strands of color surged into the 9-colored dot. Ah! Beixian's hoarse and miserable cry resounded from within the statue, and then her nascent divinity was forcefully pushed out of the statue. All of this happened too quickly, and Beixiana stood in front of the sea god statue in a daze, looking at it in disbelief. She did not know what had happened. In just a moment, the entire sea god statue turned gray, and all of the light fell into the 9-colored dot. Then, the light around Beixiana's body began to overflow and fall into the 9-colored dot. Beixiana was shocked. Her figure flashed and instantly vanished. At the same time, the gray and lusterless pillar of light suddenly glowed brightly, and then countless enormous 7-colored pythons of light started to move throughout the heavens and the earth. Boom! The entire 7-colored shell world had just returned to Beixiana's control when the entire barrier let out a thunderous rumble. The space within 10,000 miles, 100,000 miles, collapsed at the same time, and the 7-colored light pythons were forcefully extracted. At the same time, the light pythons turned into nothingness, and another 100,000 miles wide pillar of light shot into the sky. Looking at the 7-colored shell world that had previously trapped Xiao Hua and the others, Beixiana's natal shell had already turned into powder, and with a loud rumble, it turned into dust. However, the huge light beam had only just shot out a few miles into the sky when layers of mushroom-like spatial collapses appeared high up in the sky. Countless inexplicable and obscure laws that no one knew about were wantonly tearing through the spatial collapses. The light beam rushed under the laws and crashed down again. The pillar of light that was hundreds of thousands of miles wide fell into the nine-colored in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. Xiao Hua was dumbfounded, and he also did not know what had happened. However, as far as his eyes could see, his surroundings were distorted, and his divine sense could not leave his body, so he could only stare blankly. The pillar of light fell into the nine-colored sky, and in the sky hundreds of thousands of kilometers above, many strange laws disappeared at the same time. However, layers of spatial collapse still existed, and an unknown law fell from the spatial collapse onto the entire thousand demons' sacred realm. As the law fell, the dim seven-colored halo around Beixian flowed out uncontrollably and fell towards the nine-colored light. Just as Beixian was panicking, an even denser seven-colored light flew out from another part of the space and quickly fell towards the nine-colored light. The source of the light was a seven-colored conch. Not only that, but other than the distorted light and shadow, there were even more faint, dense, five-colored, and three-colored lights that all poured into the nine-colored. This. Xiao Hua was shocked. Impossible. At this time, Beixian crazy voice hysterically screamed, "I am the sea god's descendant, who can take away my bloodline? Take away the sea god's bloodline?" Xiao Hua's eyes narrowed. Naturally, he thought of the Godhead. This must be the power of the Godhead. Seeing the sea-like light surging over, Xiao Hua could not help but sigh, "Damn it, what a big deal. This is probably going to take away the bloodline of the rainbow sea god shell in the entire thousand-beast sacred realm." Thinking of this, Xiao Hua smiled coldly and used his divine sense to check his own space. As expected, after the big seven-colored halo shell world shattered, his space could be sensed. Since this was the case, Xiao Hua did not hesitate to pull Bai Qing out of the Shenhua continent. However, he saw Bai Qing standing in mid-air in a daze. Before he could figure out the situation in front of him, the five-colored light began to flow out of his body and turned into fragments of light that fell into the nine-colored. "Ao!" Bai Qing cried out loudly, sensing the disappearance of his divine sense. He did not know what had happened. Woo! Without waiting for Bai Qing to say more, Xiao Hua waved his hand and sent this hateful and pitiful demon king into the Shenhua continent again. Bai Qing wasn't the only one who was confused. All of Beixian's descendants in the thousand demons' sacred realm were confused as well. The most miserable one was the great saint of the demon clan, the five-colored sea godshell, who was closest to the nine-colored dot. Feng Wu, Wen Chu, and the others were overjoyed when they saw the shell in the sky crack. Feng Wu was about to fly over to save Xiao Hua, but before they could get close, another strange change occurred. An indescribable divine aura surged out of the crack, and the seven-colored shell, which was the most beautiful in the morning, instantly turned into nothingness. Feng Wu was overjoyed, but after the shell disappeared, an enormous beam of light shot out. Even a cultivator as strong as Feng Wu, who was at the 9th grade of essence force, was powerless under the impact of this beam of light. In an instant, he was sent flying like a fallen leaf. Before Feng Wu and the others could regain their balance, they heard another cry of surprise from nearby. "Ah! What's going on?" Hearing the voice of the five-colored sea god shell, Feng Wu and the others were alarmed and hurriedly looked over. The five-colored light around the five-colored sea god shell surged and flew into the sky. No matter how the five-colored sea god shell waved the shell, it could not stop this. Beside him, the golden-winged rock and the flying feather-void beast looked on in confusion, not knowing what to do. Wung! The five-colored sea god shell suddenly glowed with starlight, and the star marks hidden in the shell immediately flew up with the starlight. Woo woo woo! The brilliance of the stars and the moon fell from the sky, protecting the five-colored sea god shell. As the space vibrated, the five-colored sea god shell gradually turned into a star, and the five-colored star, which was thousands of miles in size, was revealed in the morning light just like that. Under the sunlight, the 7 colors of the star were so dazzling. Unfortunately, it was just like a flash in the pan. Even though the five-colored sea god shell had turned into a star, the five-colored halo showed no signs of stopping. The colorful star slowly faded under the stunned gazes of everyone and the demons. The five-colored brilliance that was extracted just flowed into the light shadow that covered the surroundings and did not appear again. When the entire star turned black and white, the five-colored sea god shell was forcibly pushed out of the star. The shell was still a shell, and the brilliance was still brilliance, but the 5 colors were gone. The primordial spirit of the 5-colored sea god shell appeared from the shell. Although it was not in human form, the golden-winged rock had already seen the frustration, surprise, and confusion on its face. The golden-winged rock couldn't help but ask, "Shell Saint, what's going on?" The 5-colored sea god shell looked at the golden-winged rock in despair. He wanted to hide the truth, but looking at the colors all over the sky, he knew that he was not the only one who would suffer today. Even the ancestor couldn't escape, so how could he hide it? "My bloodline has been taken." The 5-colored sea god shell's voice was like the wind, like a wandering soul answering. "Ah, how is that possible?" Both the golden-winged rock and the flying feather void beast were shocked. After all, the demon race was different from the human race. The bloodline was extremely important. The 5-colored sea god shell's sea god bloodline was taken away. Could he still be the 5-colored sea god shell? Chapter 4405. Hearing the 5-colored seashell's absent-minded answer, the 2 great saints of the demon race were shocked. They looked at Feng Wu, Celestial, and the others with fear. However, to their surprise, Feng Wu and the others were also puzzled. They looked at the 5-colored seashell and the strange light and shadow in the distance. Xiao Hua put Bai Qing, who had lost her bloodline, into his spatial zone. He had another thought. He knew that his Shenhua continent was isolated from the 1,000 demons' sacred realm. The backlash from the godhead and the stripping of the sea god's bloodline would not affect the Shenhua continent. Bai Qing's bloodline had been stripped, but the 5-colored sea god shell still had Bai Bo and the little white dragon. However, Xiao Hua only thought about it for a moment. He did not take Bai Bo out of Shenhua continent. Not to mention that Bai Bo was already pregnant with the little white dragon's flesh and blood. Just her act of rescuing the little white dragon from the heavenly dam water prison was something that Xiao Hua, who clearly distinguished between gratitude and grudges, could not allow such a cruel divine punishment to fall upon her. Although the 1,000 demons' sacred realm was huge, and the 3 continents were even bigger, the divine punishment was very fast. In just half the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the light that came from all directions had become sparse. The space within hundreds of thousands of miles had lost all color, except for the cluster of 9 colors. The light and shadow barrier was still there. "Fellow Daoist." Celestial flew over and asked curiously, "You? What kind of technique is this? It's really magical." Xiao Hua did not answer Celestial, but looked elsewhere. At this time, Reverend Yun and Archdevil Shi were also flying over with wounds all over their bodies. The 188 tribulation scattered nascent souls were also flying over from all directions. Fortunately, although most of them were severely injured, none of them had lost their lives. Xiao Hua slapped the top of his head, and his innate energy gushed out, sucking all the scattered nascent souls into his dantian. Then, Xiao Hua squinted his eyes and looked at Beixian in the distance. Beixian did not transform into her human form. Her original body, which had lost its color, was still standing there, looking very majestic. However, a tentacle grew out of Beixian's body, and the tentacle tightly grasped the 7-colored conch that had also lost its color. Beixian. At this point, Xiao Hua no longer called Beixian Senior. He only said indifferently, "Are you satisfied with this ending?" You. Where exactly are you? God. Beixian didn't dare to transform in front of Xiao Hua. She could only ask in fear. Xiao Hua shook his head. "Let's not talk about whether or not I'm a god. Do you think I look like a god?" How could Xiao Hua be a god? Who had ever heard of a god who was only at the 9th level of origin energy in the mortal world? Thus, Beixian hesitated for a moment and said in a low voice, "If you are not a god, then your bloodline must be even purer. Otherwise, there would be no divine punishment. Forget it." Xiao Hua smiled bitterly and waved his hand. "I don't know what the reason is. After all, this kind of divine punishment is too strange. It is not something that an insignificant cultivator like me can understand. However, no matter what the process was, the ending is already like this. I just want to ask you, are you satisfied? Beizian didn't speak for a long time. When there was no more light coming from outside the barrier, she said, you guessed right. Most of what I've told you is true. It's just that Beiming and I are not lovers. In the words of you humans, he and I are very close blood relatives. He has been very good to me since I was young. I have always regarded him as my blood brother. I am not looking for him for the sea god statue. I am just looking for him. Moreover, I believe that he is also looking for me. Blood relations are not something that can be isolated by some spatial boundary. En. Xiao Hua nodded slightly. He now believed Beizian-er's words. Because when he saw Bei Ming, it was in that innate great formation. Presumably, Bei Ming wanted to use that great formation to find Beizian-er. Unfortunately, Bei Ming didn't have the body of a half-god. He couldn't escape the corrosion of the clear time demon formation. The reason why I wanted to kill you is actually only for one reason. I didn't want the news that Bei Ming and I were stranded here to be leaked, and I didn't want the bloodline of the sea god to be discovered by the sea tribe. Speaking of this, Beizian smiled bitterly. I did it, and I did it thoroughly. Even if the pursuers of the sea race are here now, when they see Bei Ming and me, I'm afraid they will never kill us. Because we don't have any bloodline of the sea god. Beizian paused for a brief moment, then threw her head back and cried out hysterically, "Oh heaven, almighty gods, please tell me, what have I done wrong? Didn't I spend so much effort just to find my elder brother? Didn't I spend so much effort just to protect myself and prevent the sea race from discovering us? What have I done wrong? Why am I being punished like this by the gods?" Celestial, Reverend Yoon, and Archfiend She had different expressions. Celestial didn't care, Reverend Yoon looked pensive, and Archfiend She didn't think so. Upon hearing Beizian-er's sorrowful and unyielding voice, a cold smile emerged on Xiao Hua's face. Beizian-er, he said word by word, there is no need for any gods to answer this question, let alone the heaven. I can tell you. It's not your fault for looking for your elder brother, and it's not your fault for protecting yourself. It's because you've done something you shouldn't have done. I don't know what you've done, so I can't tell you anything. First, let's talk about how you've suppressed the little white dragon for over 200 years. What does the little white dragon have to do with you? He doesn't know anything. You've heard that I might know something about Dark North, so you captured him and brought him here. But, since he said he didn't know anything, why did you still suppress him? You've been suppressing him for 200 years. The lifespan of an ordinary human is no more than 100 years. How many 200 years can one live? Fortunately, he is a dragon. Not to mention the suppression, because of your suppression, the Demon King of Shrouding Sky Ridge and the Demon King of Ancient Bell Mountain have a lot of thoughts. Who knows how many of those demon clans and humans related to this Xiao died on the way to rescue this Xiao. Let's not talk about the little white dragon, Xiao Hua coldly said, since I've already come here and rescued Bei Ming from the danger zone and personally brought him to you so you can reunite with your elder brother, I can be considered your benefactor. But, in order to prevent your tracks from being exposed, you actually bit the hand that fed you and wanted to kill me inside your great rainbow halo shell world. An ungrateful person like you, if you don't suffer the wrath of the heavens, if you don't suffer the punishment of the gods, how can the heavens be fair? You only put your own benefits first and don't care about the lives of others. You act as you please in the 1,000-demon sacred realm and act as the ancestor of a demon race. You don't even put the Virokana revered world sovereign and immortal emperor Go Chen in your eyes. A selfish person like you, a domineering person, if you don't suffer the wrath of the heavens, if you don't suffer the punishment of the gods, how can the heavens be fair? Today, your sea god's Shell clan is suffering the punishment of the gods, and it is all because of you. It is all because of your previous sins, the consequences of your previous actions. Only you are qualified to taste such a bitter wine, but at this moment, you still don't repent and don't see your mistakes clearly. You still dare to thicken your skin and question the heavens? If you don't suffer the punishment of the gods, then who will? You. Beizian was truly angry and forgot that the main culprit of the divine punishment was Xiao Hua. She angrily said, "What qualifications do you have to criticize me? You didn't kill humans, you didn't kill demons. Not to mention anything else, you led 200,000 humans to attack Bai Qingyu and killed more than 1 million descendants of my Bai Qingyu clan. Why didn't you suffer the punishment of the gods? I killed people, and I also killed demons. However, I have always been afraid of the heavens, and I also believe that the gods are watching over me. Similarly, I have always done things without betraying my conscience, and I have never forced others into a dead end. If someone doesn't offend me, I will never offend them. Of course, if someone offends me, I will definitely retaliate. Everything I did was merely a counterattack, and it was all because you forced me into a corner. Xiao Hua retorted with no trace of politeness. The sea god's bloodline of the entire 1,000 demons sacred realm has been taken away. What face do you have to talk about leaving people some leeway? Bei Xian snorted disdainfully. You have the final say, so you can do whatever you want. Chimpage. Xiao Hua coldly snorted. If I didn't have a benevolent heart, do you think you can still stand here and talk to me? Bei Xian didn't say anything. After losing her lifebound shell and the great rainbow halo shell realm, although her strength was still very strong, she couldn't be considered a match in front of Xiao Hua. Just those 108th tribulation scattered nascent souls were enough to kill her. Seeing that Bei Xian was speechless, Xiao Hua didn't expect to wake her up with just a few words. He looked at the barrier on the left, which was still covered by it, and his mind swept towards the 9-colored brilliance. Boom! The moment his mind touched it, Xiao Hua felt as if his entire body had been struck by lightning. An incomparably divine will, which was even more vast and majestic than the Dragon Empress power that Xiao Hua had seen in the South Sea Dragon Palace, was born. The moment he touched it, Xiao Hua immediately felt as if he was a speck of dust facing the entire world. Then, countless visions flashed in Xiao Hua's mind at the same time. Ah! Xiao Hua screamed, and his entire transcendence golden body collapsed. Page. Seeing Xiao Hua like this, how could Bei Xian not know what had happened? She coldly snorted and said, "A man whose heart is never content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant, as expected. Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror and see clearly what you are? A mere human actually dares to covet the sea god's divine power of the Shell clan." Bei Xian's curses were vicious, but what she said was the truth. This 9-colored brilliance was the sea god's divine power that was contained in the bloodline of all the sea god's descendants in the 1,000 demons sacred realm. Although the grade of this divine power wasn't as high as the godhead that Xiao Hua gave her, it was still far from what a human cultivator like Xiao Hua could obtain. Xiao Hua had only just touched this object when the transcendent's golden body condensed from magic power was unable to support the vast divine power and collapse. Chapter 4406. However, before Bei Xian had a chance to gloat over Xiao Hua's misfortune, Xiao Hua's physical body was revealed within the crumbling golden body. Although Xiao Hua's physical body was riddled with wounds, with many of his muscles and bones exposed, those wounds had been inflicted by Bei Xian's natal shell, and had nothing to do with the power of the sea god. How is this possible? Bei Xian exclaimed once again. At this point, she had finally come to a realization that this human cultivator was definitely not an ordinary cultivator. Xiao Hua raised his hand and looked at his intact palm, then lowered his head and looked at every part of his fleshly body. Once again, he recalled the demigod body that Elder Wu of Hutu Stockade told him when he was still in Million Meng Mountains. The demigod body, as the name implies, possesses the body of a great god. Aside from the quintessence of a great god, the demigod body is no different from a great god. Now, I seem to have formed the embryonic form of a quintessence. If I'm not mistaken, the golden threads on the crystal face should be extremely pure power of faith. Xiao Hua then raised his head to look at the 9-colored brilliance and thought to himself, Elder Wu also said that the demigod body and godhead are not something that can be obtained through cultivation, and can only be obtained by relying on the power of heaven and earth and prying into the mysteries of heaven and earth. I was fortunate enough to obtain both, so it can be said that I possess the divine power that Bei Xian spoke of. However, I'm still in the mortal world, so I don't know how to control divine power. As such, it's not that I can't obtain the power of the sea god, it's that I can't obtain it. If this were in the past, Perhaps Xiao Hua would really have reached out to touch the 9-colored radiance to test his own thoughts. However, Xiao Hua was already a grand ascension stage cultivator, so how could he risk his own physical body in such a reckless manner? The power of the sea god is contained in the bloodline of the Shell tribe, so Beiziana can use her bloodline to activate the holy artifact of the Shell tribe. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes. He really couldn't bear to abandon the power of the sea god, and his mind raced. That's right. I can't use the power of the sea god as a flying god, so I have to use a holy artifact. Or perhaps the sea god's power also required a bloodline or a saint artifact. The statue of the sea god has already been destroyed, and there are no more descendants of the sea god in the Thousand Beast sacred realm. My bloodline cannot be borrowed. If that's the case, I'll have to find a suitable saint artifact. Little doe. At this moment, Xiao Hua thought of the unknown origin of the item without hesitation. At the same time, he didn't know how to repair it or activate it. But it was another extremely terrifying small fight. Little Doe was able to destroy the sword tomb, trap the ferocious flames of the celestial being Bloodbone, and even release the Pangu axe. Presumably, it's not a saint artifact, but it can also restrain the 9-colored sea god's power, right? Xiao Hua waved his hand and took out Xiao Dou. What is this? Beizian was slightly stunned. Seeing Xiao Hua toss the small bucket towards the 9-colored sea god's power, she couldn't help but mock. Human, don't waste your time. The sea god's power will be taken away by the sea god soon. What? Hearing this, Xiao Hua couldn't help but be shocked. He hurriedly raised his hand and pointed at Xiao Dou. He raised his head and said, "You said that God can sense the sea god's power. He will descend here?" Chimpage. Beiziana sneered and replied with contempt, "How can Lord Sea God come to such a low-level world? The sea god's power still exists at this moment only because of the sea god's light world around it. After a while, this light world will disperse under the sunlight and the sea god's power will dissipate in this space. The 3 continents won't be able to withstand the sea god's power, so the sea god's power will naturally go far away. In the end, it will be taken away by the sea god." Oh, so that's how it is. Xiao Hua was relieved when he heard this. However, Beiziana said again, "If not for my sea god's bloodline and the saint artifact, it would be impossible for you to use this sea god's power. You should give up on this idea. Once your saint artifact comes in contact with the sea god's power, it will definitely be crushed into powder by the god's punishment. You will also." Beizian originally wanted to say that Xiao Hua would also be affected, but seeing that the previous 2 sea gods' punishment didn't injure Xiao Hua, she obediently shut her mouth. "How do you know if you don't try?" Xiao Hua pointed at Xiao Dou with his finger, and Xiao Dou fell down. Shua. The 9-colored sea god's power was actually taken away by Xiao Dou. Moreover, Xiao Dou, which had never changed before, actually emitted a 9-colored brilliance when it came in contact with the sea god's power. Layer after layer of light waves wantonly overflowed from the 4 walls of Xiao Dou, and around Xiao Dou, a thin layer of pitch-black space faintly formed. An aura that could exterminate all living things was emitted from the space. Beizian's eyes fell out, if she had eyes. Suddenly, Beiziana shouted, how can you be a human? You must be a heaven race. This seems to be a heaven race's saint artifact." Beizian's voice was loud and full of fear. Che! Xiao Hua disdainfully glared at Beizian and said, "If you don't know, don't guess blindly. This Xiao is a real human. How can I be a heaven race? Then, how can you have a heaven race's saint artifact? Isn't this the legendary saint artifact used by the heaven race during the ancient war, 10,000 extinguishing heavenly dipper?" Beiziana couldn't believe her eyes and shouted, "Although I have never seen this item before, but this 10,000 extinguishing aura is exactly the same as what is recorded in my Red Sea region's royal secret codex. Where is the secret codex? Is there a method to refine the 10,000 extinguishing heavenly dipper? How do I activate this 10,000 extinguishing heavenly dipper?" Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and asked. Greedy human. Beizian was completely convinced at this time. She sighed and said, My shell race's secret codex was already snatched away by the sea race when they invaded the Red Sea region. If I took the secret codex, even if I escaped to the 1000 Devil Sacred Realm, I'm afraid the sea race would still chase after me. As for how to refine the 10,000 extinguishing Heavenly Dipper and how to activate it, you should go find the Heaven race's secret codec. How would I know? Forget it, forget it. Xiao Hua's mind rolled up the 10,000 extinguishing Heavenly Dipper. Sure enough, no more divine energy was produced. Xiao Hua easily stored the 10,000 extinguishing Heavenly Dipper into his space along with the sea god's power. At this time, the 10,000 extinguishing Heavenly Dipper could no longer stay in the space where Reverend Yun was. Instead, it landed in another unformed space and stopped, floating quietly. After the 9-colored sea god's power was gone, the sea god's light realm was also slowly disintegrating under the scorching sun. Beixian Er's true form was revealed under the sunlight. Although the 7-colored brilliance was no longer there, her snow-white skin was tinged with a pinkish color, which really made Xiao Hua's itch rumble. As if unable to bear Xiao Hua's passionate gaze, Beixian Er's huge body emitted a rumbling sound and quickly shrunk. In just a moment, she had transformed into a beautiful woman dressed in a snow-white dress. Unfortunately, this beautiful woman's face was filled with an unyielding stubbornness. Her eyes were also filled with frost, and she looked at everything around her with impatience. It was only when her gaze fell on the conch in her hand that warmth appeared in her eyes. The light realm was gone, and Xiao Hua's gaze moved away from Beixian Er's body. He looked around and saw that the ground had collapsed, leaving behind a deep pit. The mountains and lakes he saw before were all gone, and under the deep pit and the crack in the ground, there was an undulating mess. Gravel, wood chips, flesh, and bones were scattered everywhere. Everything was completely different from the Baiqingyu that Xiao Hua saw before. The sea turns into mulberry fields, the mountains are moved, and the seas are filled. That's all there is to it. Xiao Hua looked around and released his divine sense. Then, he shook his head slightly and sighed, if it weren't for this battle, how could it have become like this? While he was talking, a rather anxious Yuan will swept over, but when it landed on Xiao Hua, it was quickly withdrawn. Then, a phoenix spread its wings and flew over from afar. Wasn't that the 7 stars' great saint, Feng Wu? After Feng Wu, Wen Chu and Daoist, which each used their divine abilities and flew over like shooting stars. The 3 clones shouted almost in unison, "Fellow Daoist, are you alright?" "Ha ha." Xiao Hua lowered his head to look at his tattered Daoist robe and the wounds on his body. He said with a smile, however, "They are all flesh wounds and can't be considered serious. I'll be fine after resting for a few days." Even fellow Daoist Celestial was injured. This ancestor of the 1000 Demons' sacred realm is indeed powerful. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes, and her gaze fell on Beixian Er not far away. A 7 stars great saint is indeed awe-inspiring. Beixian Er felt the ferocity in Feng Wu's eyes and said with equal harshness, "Unfortunately, Xiao Hua didn't think you were my opponent, so he didn't dare to pull you into the barrier. Otherwise, I'd like to see what you're capable of. It's not too late now." Feng Wu flapped her wings and sneered. There seemed to be no fear in her tone. "Ancestor." At this moment, the 5-colored sea god shell also flew over with a long face and said anxiously, "What? What exactly happened? What happened?" "It's nothing." Beixian Er looked up at the sky and pointed at the sun, saying, "The night of the 1000 Demons' sacred realm has passed and the day has come. The sun still rises. When the day ends and the night comes, the stars still rise." But the 5-colored sea god shell wanted to ask more, but Beixian Er snorted coldly and scolded it via voice transmission. Only then did the 5-colored sea god shell stand to the side and look at the sky, feeling wronged. It was the golden-winged great rock that flew the fastest. Only now did it come over with the flying feather-void beast. When the 2 great saints of the demon race saw Beixian Er, they didn't dare to slight her and hurriedly bowed. Beixian Er didn't say anything to the 2 great saints of the demon race and only nodded slightly. The 2 great saints seemed to be very used to Beixian Er's attitude. After getting up, they looked at each other and stood to the side without saying anything, quietly waiting for Beixian Er's orders. Beiziana glanced at the three great saints' respect and felt slightly relieved. She asked again, "By Qingyu caused such a big commotion, why did only you three great saints come over? Where are the other three?" Chapter 4407. Yes, old ancestor. The five-colored sea god Seashell hurriedly replied, "There's a warning from the north of the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. 3 demons have been killed for no reason. About 200,000 demons have gone missing. The 3 great sages have split up and gone to investigate the situation." Oh! Beiziana was stunned. The demons from the Boundless Sea, Sun Cheong Mountain, and Dark Abyss didn't go? They actually alerted 3 great sages? Old ancestor, the golden-winged rock said, Kangyu Heaven sent 3 great sages to investigate, but they didn't send back any information. They probably can't come back. Seeing that the situation was urgent, Dragon Sage and the others went personally. Millimeter. Beiziana nodded and didn't ask any more. At this time, Xiao Hua had already transmitted the whole story in his heart. Wen Chu, Feng Wu, and Wu's eyes lit up. They really didn't expect Beiziana's ability to be so powerful, and such a miraculous thing actually happened in the big 7-colored halo shell realm. The so-called divine punishment, godhead, divine race, and sea god were all unheard of. After Xiao Hua finished speaking, he looked at the 3 great sages of the demon race and knew it was time to end this matter. He took out the Kunlun mirror and used his magic power to bring Little White Dragon and Jadewave out of the Shenhua continent. Ah! Beiziana exclaimed in surprise when she saw Jadewave. On the other hand, Xiao Hua glanced at Beiziana and said indifferently, "Apart from the fact that I won't attack unless I'm attacked, I'm different from you. Unless it's the end, I definitely won't cut off all paths of retreat and leave no chance of survival for others. I know you didn't believe me before, but now, do you believe me?" The 3 great sages of the demon race were confused. Beiziana looked up at the blue sky and then at the vast land. She sighed. "Alas, even if I don't believe you, so what?" Her tone was so vicissitudes of life that she didn't seem so depressed when she was defeated by Xiao Hua. Then Beiziana bent down and performed a courtesy that Xiao Hua didn't understand. She said, "Spiritual Master Xiao's breadth of mind is the first I've seen in my life. I was wrong before, please accept my bow. Sigh, senior, there's no need to be so courteous." Xiao Hua also sighed. Based on the sea god statue alone, regardless of whether the rainbow conch was related to Shang Huaming or not, Beiziana was definitely related to him. He could be considered half a disciple of Shang Huaming. As a junior, he should be on good terms with Beiziana. But because of Beiziana, things had escalated to this point. Not only had Beiziana suffered divine punishment, but even the sea god bloodline of the 1,000-monster sacred realm and the innocent rainbow sea conch had been affected. Xiao Hua and Shang Huaming's previous feelings had almost completely vanished. Furthermore, Xiao Hua almost didn't dare to believe that if the rainbow sea conch could transform and learned of what had happened, he would fly into a rage. Therefore, he could only help Beiziana up and said, "This is fate playing tricks on us. You and I are just pawns in the game, the previous misunderstanding. Why don't we just let it go? Spiritual Master is so magnanimous. I really don't have the face to face you. I will do as you say." Beiziana stood up, her heart filled with complex feelings. At this moment, Little White Dragon woke up from his daze. He was shocked to see the 3 great sages. Although he had never seen a great sage before, how could he not recognize the aura and appearance of the great sage of the demon clan? He was just about to pull Jadewave and escape when he turned around and saw Xiao Hua. Beside Xiao Hua was Daoist Sorcerer, who he was even more familiar with. "Xiao. Little White. Why are you here? There's nothing for you to do here. Hurry up and leave." Little White Dragon's face didn't show any ecstasy. Instead, after a flash of surprise, his face immediately tensed up. He hurriedly shouted and gave Xiao Hua a look. Xiao Hua smiled, his heart filled with warmth. He waved his hand and said, "Little White, I've wronged you these 200 years. Ah!" Until now, Little White suddenly realized that although the Xiao Hua in front of him was very familiar, his temperament was completely different. Even with his own strength, he couldn't detect Xiao Hua's strength. Little White retreated a few feet in shock and said anxiously, Are you Xiao Hua? If he's not Xiao Hua, who am I? Who am I? Daoist Sorcerer extended his hand and said with a smile. Daoist Sorcerer didn't look like Xiao Hua. His face couldn't be distinguished by the naked eye and divine sense. However, Little White Dragon knew immediately that Daoist Sorcerer was the soul cultivator Xiao Hua. He was the soul cultivator Xiao Hua who cultivated together with him in the mysterious dark clouds of Xiao Hua. Little White Dragon stretched out his hand almost without hesitation and shook hands with Daoist Sorcerer. Feeling the slight heat from Daoist Sorcerer's hand, Little White Dragon immediately understood. He was really ecstatic and shouted, "Congratulations, fellow cultivator." "Haha, no need to congratulate me. It won't be long before I congratulate you," Daoist Sorcerer said with a smile and looked up at Jadewave behind Little White Dragon, who was at a loss. Little White Dragon chuckled and waved at Jadewave, "Come here quickly." As soon as Jadewave landed in the air, she immediately saw the three great saints of the demon race. She almost fainted, but when she saw Baixian, she was surprised because she only knew of the great ancestor, but had never seen her before. However, just 3 demon race great sages were enough to make her feel like she was sitting on pins and needles. She stood in the air and didn't dare to move. However, what puzzled Jadewave was that the 3 demon race great sages didn't even look at her. They all held their breath and looked at the sky, treating her as nothing. While Jadewave was at a loss, Little White Dragon's voice came. Jadewave was slightly stunned and didn't move. "Bitch!" Little White Dragon was angry and shouted, "These are my good friends. They came specially to save me. Why aren't you coming over to greet them?" "Yes, darling Xiao." Jadewave panicked and hurried over. Hearing Jadewave call Little White Dragon darling Xiao, Xiao Hua's face was a little embarrassed. He instantly thought of Fairy Jing and felt bitter in his heart. Hee. Little White Dragon proudly pointed at Jadewave and said, "Big brothers, this is Little One's wife. Little brother took her in when I was in by Qingyu. When little brother was suppressed in the Heavenly Dam water prison, she took care of little brother. Seeing that she was so attentive, little brother took her. Little brother escaped from the Heavenly Dam water prison, it was also her credit. Come, this is." Little White Dragon first pointed at Xiao Hua and was about to introduce him. Then he remembered and scolded, "This is the real Xiao Hua, Daoist Xiao. You don't have to call me darling Xiao in the future." "Yes, darling Xiao," Jadewave answered naturally. However, her face immediately flushed red and she looked at Little White Dragon with some fear. "Bitch, what did I tell you?" Little White Dragon felt that he had lost face and scolded, "Call me." At this point, Little White Dragon rubbed his nose like Xiao Hua. Forget it, he had called himself Xiao many times in the past 200 years. He had forgotten that he didn't have a name. Xiao Hua smiled and said, "You are this Xiao's brother in tribulation. You also helped this Xiao block the calamity of suppression for 200 years. So what if your surname is Xiao? How about I call you Xiao Bai?" Little White Dragon was a member of the dragon race and had always regarded women as nothing. He could scold Jadewave at will, but this didn't mean that he was stupid. On the contrary, his experience and the inheritance of the dragon race from the fire dragon soul allowed him to understand more. He had seen Xiao Hua grow from a chi condensation cultivator to a high-grade cultivator that even he didn't know the depth of. Now that Xiao Hua was able to remain calm in front of a great sage of the demon race, he naturally guessed Xiao Hua's cultivation base. A human Grand Ascension stage cultivator called him a brother in tribulation and even asked him to take his surname. How could Little White Dragon not know to climb up the ladder? He didn't pay any special respects and only smiled casually as he replied, "Hehe, thank you, big brother." He then pointed at Xiao Hua and said, "This is Xiao Hua, Daoist Master Xiao. Greetings, Daoist Master Xiao." Jadewave's expression tensed up as she respectfully saluted. Her posture was very standard and was the etiquette of a human woman. It seemed that she had worked hard before. Xiao Hua smiled and raised a hand to help Jadewave up. "You are Xiao Bai's wife and my sister-in-law. From now on, we are a family, so there's no need to be too polite. Yes, Daoist Master. Jadewave's heart was finally at ease upon hearing Xiao Hua mention a family. Some of her previous worries had been answered. These are all my good friends. Xiao Bai naturally couldn't recognize all of Xiao Hua's clones, so it wasn't convenient for him to introduce them at this time. He simply pointed at the clones and said with a smile, "I'll introduce them to you in the future. Greetings, uncles." Jadewave saluted again, even though she really didn't understand what these so-called uncles meant. "Haha, get up." Feng Wu and the others laughed. Xiao Bai is really lucky. After being suppressed, he can actually find a beautiful woman to serve him. Not to mention fellow Daoist Xiao, even we are jealous. Hehe, this is where my charm lies. Big brothers, you can't be jealous. Xiao Bai's tone was very similar to Xiao Hua's. He even touched his nose and said, "Ha ha ha." Feng Wu and the others couldn't help but laugh again. "You really boast shamelessly. Little White, stand at the side." Xiao Hua and the other clones finished laughing, and then they instructed. "Yes, big brother." Xiao Bai pulled Jadewave and hurriedly stood beside Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua raised his head, looked at Beixian and asked, "Senior, Xiao Bai was suppressed by you for no reason for 200 years. How do you think you should compensate him?" "This is my fault." "Xiao Bai, whatever compensation you want, just say it. I'll agree to it." Beixian saw with her own eyes that the only bloodline of the Sea God clan had an affair with Little White Dragon. Moreover, Jadewave still had Little White Dragon's bloodline in her bosom. She also had Sea God's bloodline. This Little White Dragon was originally her family, so why would she be stingy? Even without Xiao Hua saying it, she was willing to agree to any condition of Little White Dragon. Chapter 4408. How could Xiao Hua not know what Beixian was thinking? He smiled and said, "This condition is too good for you, Senior. How about this? I have a condition that I hope Senior and the 3 great saints will agree to." "Oh!" The rock was surprised. He tilted his head and looked at Beixian before asking Xiao Hua, "What is Daoist Xiao's condition?" "I want Little White to be the Dragon King of the West Sea." Xiao Hua said word by word. "Impossible." The flying feather space beast shouted, not to mention the North Sea Dragon King Ao Hong. Even if Ao Chen died, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas is still the ruler of the West Sea. Even without the palace, there is still the Dragon Island. Even the second great saint of the demon race, the black-armored Pentaceratops, doesn't dare to say that he can be the ruler of the West Sea. How can we agree to this? What you can't do, I can do it. The black-armored Pentaceratops can't be the ruler of the West Sea, but Little White can, because I want Little White to be the ruler of the West Sea. Xiao Hua lightly said, "I want you to agree that if one day Little White wants to be the ruler of the West Sea, you can only agree and not oppose." The rock, flying feather space beast, and the 5-colored sea god shell looked at each other. They then cautiously looked at Beixian but unfortunately, they couldn't see anything from her face. After a while, the rock smiled and said, "The ruler of the West Sea is not something we can decide. Since Daoist Xiao has such an intention, I will naturally do my best to help you accomplish it. It can also be considered as compensation for Xiao Bai." "Yes, I also agree." The flying feather space beast also agreed. Only the 5-colored sea god shell didn't say anything. Of course, it was not that he didn't want to agree, but because Beixian was behind him, he didn't dare to make a decision on his own. Daoist Xiao's thoughts are also my thoughts. Beixian finally revealed a smile. "However, I still hope that Bai Bo can be the Empress of the West Sea Dragon Palace." "Haha, this is Little White's matter. I can't agree on his behalf." Xiao Hua replied with a smile, "There are 7 great sages in the 1,000 Devil Sacred Realm. Now, there are 4 great sages here, and with this Xiao, the Dragon Master of the Dragon Island, this Xiao doesn't believe that the Dragon Emperor of the West Sea Dragon Palace can't change hand." Beixian smiled bitterly. Looking at Jadewave's cute and lovable appearance, Beixian understood that even if Little White Dragon kicked her away, she would still crawl back to Little White Dragon's side. Needless to say, if Little White Dragon became the Dragon King of the West Sea Dragon Palace, if Jadewave did not establish his might, How could he expect Jadewave to cause trouble with Little White Dragon? However, Basiana also understood that as a little white dragon of the Dragon Clan, it was naturally attractive to the females of the Demon Clan. It was only because he had suppressed him in the Heavenly Dam water prison for 200 years that Jadewave had the chance to pester Little White Dragon. Otherwise, who knew how many wives and concubines Little White Dragon would have had in these 200 years? However, Basiana had no other choice. Because of her mistake, because of the divine punishment, only Jadewave and the child in her womb were left of the sea god's bloodline. Moreover, if Jadewave became the queen of the West Sea Dragon Palace, it would be extremely beneficial to the Shell clan's reproduction in the Four Seas. Therefore, she gave an extremely rare smile. Looking at Little White Dragon, she asked, "Xiao Bai, if you agree to my conditions, I will definitely do my best to make you the master of the West Sea." "Who are you?" Little White Dragon naturally had eyes but could not see. He glanced at Basiana and asked disdainfully, "I'm not human." Basiana smiled and said, "I'm from the Shell clan, and also, the great saint of the Demon Clan, the ancestor of the five-colored sea god Shell. Similarly, the other great saints also call me ancestor. Also, it was my idea to capture you and imprison you here. You should." Little White was about to fly into a rage when Jadewave, who was beside him, hurriedly hugged his arm and said anxiously, "Darling Xiao." Basiana ignored Little White's anger and said again, "Spiritual Master Xiao also said that this is your compensation. Moreover, I also agreed that as long as you are willing, you can do whatever you want in the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm." "Hihi, so good." Little White Dragon pinched his chin and looked at Basiana with a lustful gaze. Just as he was about to speak, Xiao Hua frowned and transmitted his voice, "Little White Dragon, don't be rash." Little White Dragon could ignore Basiana's temptation, but he could not ignore Xiao Hua's reprimand. His heart trembled, and he drooled. He said in all seriousness, "Ancestor, you are thinking too much. Previously, this junior hated Bai Qingyu to the bone, and wished that I could eat the flesh of those 3 demon kings and drink their blood. However, since my wife has taken care of me, what more can this junior ask for? Perhaps the reason why Ancestor captured this junior to Bai Qingyu was to fulfill this junior's fate with my wife. This junior can't thank senior enough." As he spoke, Little White Dragon tied at his clothes and bowed to Basiana, saying, "Junior Xiao Bai greets Ancestor." Damn it. Xiao Hua saw how Little White Dragon acted with ease and couldn't help but laugh inwardly. This Little White Dragon is really something. No matter if it is young grass or old shells, they all like his glib tongue. Although Basiana's sea god bloodline had been stolen, she hadn't lost much of her abilities. Moreover, she was the ancestor of the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm. As a descendant of the Red Sea Domain's royal family, how could she not have some means to control the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm? Now that she likes Little White Dragon and is thinking about her lost bloodline, the chances of Little White Dragon sitting on the dragon throne of the West Sea Dragon Palace increased by 30%. Little White Dragon has the fire dragon soul of the West Sea Dragon Palace and can control the dragon throne of the West Sea. This is 20%. I am the Dragon Master of the Dragon Island, and I can be said to be famous in the Four Seas. I should be able to fight against 20%. This gives me a 70% chance. As for the remaining 30%, the Dragon Palace of the Three Seas will take 10%, and the Immortal Palace will take 20%. Hihi, it seems like it is only a matter of time before Little White Dragon sits on the dragon throne of the West Sea Dragon Palace. Good, good, good. Basiana said good 3 times in a row. She waved her hand and said, "Good child, come over and stand beside me. When this matter is over, you can go with old ancestor. Your strength is much weaker than Ao Hong's. After I help you increase your strength, you can rightfully become the master of the West Sea Dragon Palace. Many thanks, old ancestor." Little White Dragon stood up with a smile but did not go to Basiana's side. He said, "Junior and Big Brother have not seen each other for hundreds of years. Junior will be following old ancestor in the future. It is better for me to get closer to Big Brother first. Although we are not blood related, we have lived and died together. It is better than being blood related." Little White Dragon naturally did not know about the matter between Bei Xian and Bei Ming. However, his words immediately touched Bei Xian's heart. Bei Xian's tears immediately gushed out. She said repeatedly, "Good child, good child. I am relieved that Baibo can find such a loving husband like you. Damn it, what is this?" The flying feather void beast at the side rolled his eyes. Little White Dragon was lustful by nature. Where was the shadow of a loving husband? However, he had never seen Bei Xian so fond of any demon in the 1,000 demons sacred realm. Even the 5-colored sea godshell was not good. After Little White Dragon finished speaking, Xiao Hua glanced at the golden-winged great pengbird and the 5-colored sea godshell. He waved his hand and threw Bai Qingyu's Demon King Bai Qing, Shrouding Sky Ridge's Demon King Peng Jun, and Ancient Bell Mountain's Demon King Ni Quan out of Shenhua continent. The 3 Demon Kings landed in mid-air and looked around. They immediately pounced in front of Bei Xian and shouted, "Old ancestor, you have to make the decision for us." Bei Xian's face was full of smiles, but when she saw the 3 Demon Kings, her face turned cold again. She didn't even say a word and just looked at them coldly. Old ancestor. Bai Qing still couldn't see the situation clearly. Although Ni Quan had never seen Bei Xian, he had heard a lot from Bai Qing. Now he saw Bei Xian's unkind expression and then looked at Xiao Hua and the other clones who were more arrogant than the 3 great sages. Little White Dragon was even more arrogant. How could he not know what to do? There was no need for the flying feather void beast to give him a signal. He turned around without hesitation and pounced in front of Xiao Hua. He kowtowed and shouted, "Spiritual Master Xiao, this is all my fault. I was blinded by greed. I wanted to take Senior's strength in the hidden immortal continent under my command. This is completely my greed. I am willing to atone for my sins. As long as Senior can spare my life, I am willing to agree to anything." After speaking, Ni Quan fell in the air and didn't say another word. Ni Quan naturally understood better than Bai Qing and Peng Jun. He was just using Xiao Hua's reputation to attract human cultivators. He wanted to use Shui Ming's hand to establish his own force in the hidden immortal continent. Compared to Bai Qing and Peng Jun, his crime was the lightest. Moreover, everything was achieved with the help of Shui Mingzi and other human cultivators. He himself didn't have any direct fault. He could even push everything to Shui Mingzi. However, this was also Ni Quan's cleverness. He already understood that Xiao Hua knew everything, so he took the initiative to take the blame. Even if Xiao Hua didn't think highly of him, at least he wouldn't blame everything on him. Looking at Peng Jun of the Sky Concealing Ridge, he obviously didn't have Ni Quan's servility. Although Peng Jun already understood when Ni Quan turned around, he still hesitated and looked at the expression of the golden-winged rock. How could the golden-winged rock give him any hint? After Ni Quan finished speaking, Peng Jun also turned his head and bowed. Junior knows he was wrong. "Please punish me, old ancestor." Only now did Bai Qing wake up and look at Bei Xian. But his eyes were still full of confusion. He really didn't understand. How could the old ancestor, who was more powerful than the 6 great saints of the demon clan, be defeated by Xiao Hua of the human clan? However, when his gaze fell on the 5-colored seashell beside Bei Xian, he saw that the 5-colored seashell had lost its 5-colored brilliance. He sucked in a breath of cold air. As a demon king, he naturally had a decision. He turned his head without hesitation. When he was about to kneel, his gaze swept over Bai Qing, who was snuggling up to the little white dragon. Bai Qing was stunned at first. He didn't think of anything, but he didn't dare to neglect. He knelt in front of Xiao Hua and whispered, "Junior was blinded by greed. I actually dared to suppress Senior." Chapter 4409. At this point, Bai Qing suddenly stopped, as if he had realized something. He lifted his body slightly, as if he wanted to look in Bai Bo's direction. However, he only lifted his body for a moment before stopping again. With this lift and stop, Bai Qing's thoughts were clear, and he figured out the cause of this matter. At this moment, his heart was more assured than Ni Quan and Peng Jun. With Bai Bo by Little White Dragon's side, How could his life be in danger? Senior, this is all Junior's fault. Bai Qing didn't dare to mention Baixian and only poured dirty water on himself. I shouldn't have tortured Senior's substitute. Moreover, Junior shouldn't have. Bai Qing really didn't know how to defame himself. After all, he was doing things for Baixian and he really didn't have any plans of his own. Junior's father deserves to die. Bai Bo naturally knew her father's character. Seeing her father like this, and thinking about Baixian's words, Bai Bo knew what Xiaohua needed. She hurriedly flew over and knelt in the air. Although her abdomen wasn't particularly swollen, she still deliberately slowed down her movements, appearing very careful and clumsy. She said pitifully, even if he has something to ask Daoist, he can't suppress Daoist's substitute and suffer the pain of being refined by the fire pillar every day. This crime is already deserving of death. He shouldn't have flaunted in the 1,000 demons' sacred realm, or even the hidden immortal continent to tarnish Daoist's name. This is even more deserving of death. Especially, for the sake of Daoist, who knows how many humans and demons have lost their lives. Although my Bai Qingyu's demons have all died in this battle, but my Bai Qingyu's demons deserve to die. Xiaohua's face was as heavy as water, and he didn't say much. He had already killed nearly 1 million demons, and wiped out Bai Qingyu. At this moment, he also had the intention to kill Demon King Bai Qing, but, for Bai Qing's sake, he couldn't really kill her. Moreover, it seemed like this matter wasn't as simple as it seemed on the surface. Bai Bo begged again, but Junior also knows that my father isn't a human, and his thoughts aren't as sharp as a human's. Many things can only be understood after the fact. When he was in Bai Qingyu demon realm, he was influenced by the other demons. Even the matters in the heavenly dam water prison were all handled by the juniors. Junior knew that father was in the wrong, so when Senior was being interrogated under the heavenly dam water prison fire pillar, Junior was very lenient and wanted to make up for father's mistake. I hope Senior can spare my father's life on account of this Junior serving Senior's substitute for over 100 years. This Junior is willing to agree on behalf of my father and offer the Bai Qingyu demon realm to Senior as an apology. Damn it. Hearing Jadewave's words, Ni Quan involuntarily cursed in his heart. This little seashell, although he didn't mention a name, his words were all hinting at this king, especially this Bai Qingyu. The demons were all killed by the humans, and the terrain of this place changed drastically. It must have been a battle between the great sages of my race and the humans. Bai Qingyu must have been trampled to the point of no return. She naturally didn't feel any burden by offering Bai Qingyu to the humans. But what about my ancient Bell Mountain? That's my painstaking effort for who knows how many years. However, it was only an instant before Ni Quan's thoughts changed rapidly. He thought to himself, Jadewave dared to offer Bai Qingyu to the humans, so why wouldn't I? My ancient Bell Mountain is surrounded by ferocious demon kings, and they are even more dangerous than Bai Qingyu. Even if the humans occupy the ancient Bell Mountain, they might not be able to defend it. Damn it, my life is more important now. Besides, now that the human army isn't here, they must have gone to attack the ancient Bell Mountain and concealed Sky Ridge. How can my ancient Bell Mountain be a match for those ferocious human armies? Thinking of this, Ni Quan cried out, unwilling to fall behind, that's right. This junior also has the same thoughts. This junior's sins are truly too grave. This junior is willing to offer the ancient Bell Mountain to senior to atone for my sins. The moment Ni Quan spoke, Peng Jun's nose was about to become crooked from anger. His originally bent body couldn't help but straighten up. This was truly bullying a demon. He was merely interrogating a 5th-grade essence energy human, and when he was interrogating, he didn't even dare to speak loudly for fear of scaring this human until he lost his memories. He had tormented himself for several hundred years, and not only did he not get anything out of him, it was all for naught. Instead, he had to hand over his tens of thousands of years of foundation to the humans. How could he accept this? Besides, behind him was the demon race's #1 great sage. If he relented, where would the golden-winged great rock's face be? Looking at Xiaohua again, he really laughed out loud. The more he looked at Jadewave, the more he liked her. She was truly a tactful little lass. Xiao Hua actually didn't think too much. He just wanted to squeeze out some benefits from the 3 demon kings, or perhaps from the 3 demon race great sages. But this little lass was great. Not only did she serve little white dragon well and repay him with her body, she even handed over her ancestral inheritance to him. This made him, who originally wanted to be ruthless to the 3 great demon kings, how could he bear to do it? However, looking at Peng Jun's appearance, Xiao Hua smiled slightly and asked, "You are the demon king of Concealed Sky Ridge, right? Why, you look a little unconvinced." Junior is Peng Jun. Facing Xiao Hua, a human Grand Ascension stage expert, even though Peng Jun felt wronged, he still had respect for the strong. He straightened his body and bowed slightly, saying respectfully, "Junior feels that Junior was wrong. Senior, please punish me." However, Junior didn't know at all. He was Senior's substitute, and Junior is the demon king of Concealed Sky Ridge. If I want to do something, I don't dare to have too many misgivings. If Senior's punishment is too heavy, Junior feels. Xiao Hua's face turned cold, and Peng Jun immediately felt his entire body turn cold. A wave of fear rose from the bottom of his heart. Xiao Hua's voice once again appeared in his ears, and even in his heart, although the one you suppressed was Xiao Bai. But the one you really wanted to suppress was me. Think about it, if we humans suppressed your race's great sage, how would you react? Xiao Bai is like me. Suppressing Xiao Bai is suppressing me. If I don't wash away my humiliation with blood, how can I get rid of it? But, Peng Jun knew what Xiao Hua said was true, but he felt that he was really wronged. Xiao Hua glanced at the golden-winged rock, feeling a little puzzled. Because of the 3 demon kings' intentions, apart from Peng Jun's, he already knew the other 2 demon kings' intentions. Moreover, Xiao Hua also understood that the 3 demon kings must have other backers. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to make a move on Dragon Island's Dragon Master. But from the golden-winged rock's reaction, this demon race's first great sage didn't seem to know at all. Sage Peng. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua simply ignored Peng Jun, looking at the golden-winged rock, and asked indifferently, "Do you know about this?" The golden-winged rock raised his brows, his eyes flashing with golden light, and replied disdainfully, "This sage doesn't know about this. If it was this sage's intention, how could this sage let Concealed Sky Ridge take the blame? If it were Ni Quan, he would definitely accept the golden-winged rock's words and take the blame himself. But Peng Jun was different. He looked at the golden-winged rock in surprise, and asked curiously, Is this not Sage Peng's intention? Damn it, of course this sage doesn't know." The golden-winged rock scolded, "This sage doesn't know Daoist Xiao, and has no intention of coveting the human race's power. Why would this sage instruct you? That's strange." Peng Jun scratched his head and said, "This junior received Kang Yu Tian's order to interrogate a dragon that was with Senior Xiao. This junior rushed to Bai Qingyu. Where's the beast skin for the message?" The golden-winged rock was a little angry and asked. Peng Jun smiled bitterly and said, "If you need a reply to a message, you will send 2 pieces of beast skin. One of the beast skin has a message, and it also has the symbol of Saint Peng. After this junior reads the beast skin, it will disappear. The other beast skin is blank. After this junior writes it, I activate my demon energy and it will fly away. If there's no need for a reply, only 1 beast skin will be sent." "Damn it, you're really stupid." The golden-winged rock scolded, "You've been used by other demons, and you still think you're loyal to me." Peng Jun stiffened his neck and said, "That beast skin has your mark, so of course this junior thinks it's your instruction. How dare you talk back?" The golden-winged rock was furious. He flapped his left wing and was about to hit Peng Jun. But when he saw the stubborn look on Peng Jun's face, he sighed and lowered his wing. Although the golden-winged great rock was innately strong and intelligent, it was also stubborn and arrogant. It was the same for itself. It really couldn't force its juniors to be stronger than it. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and watched the farce. He could not understand if what the golden-winged rock said was true. However, Reverend Yun was a body condensed from the dragon cleansing pool in the folded Emerald Legacy Land. If the golden-winged rock obtained Yun's body, It would be very beneficial for him to step into the supreme realm and break through the void. Therefore, Xiao Hua could not rule out the possibility that the golden-winged rock was just putting on a show. Xiao Hua said indifferently, "Whether sky-obscuring ridge did it intentionally or not, this matter has tainted my name, and sky-obscuring ridge must pay the price. Either Peng Jun dies, or he can be spared from death, but he cannot escape punishment. Sky-obscuring ridge must choose one. You have to pay the price for offending an expert." Feng Wu smiled and said, "Reverend Xiao is my good friend. You can see that Reverend Xiao is my friend. Peng Jun, don't you feel honored that you have given sky-obscuring ridge to me after offending me?" Just as Feng Wu said, although Peng Jun's submission to Xiao Hua was an apology to a Mahayana cultivator, it was, after all, a humiliation to the human race. Not only Peng Jun's face, but also the golden-winged rock's face. If Peng Jun did it intentionally, Feng Wu would not say anything no matter what Xiao Hua did. But obviously, Peng Jun was being used by some demon race. Since Feng Wu was a 7 stars great saint, he could not help but feel a little sympathy for Peng Jun. Therefore, he also spoke. Feng Wu's words were fundamentally different from Xiao Hua's. Peng Jun had given sky-obscuring ridge to Feng Wu, a 7 stars great saint of the demon race. It was not a humiliation, but an honor. Chapter 44:10. At this point, if Peng Jun still hesitates and doesn't make a decision, then he doesn't deserve to be the demon king of Shrouding Sky Ridge. Peng Jun hurriedly bows and says respectfully, "Junior is willing to offer the foundation of Shrouding Sky Ridge as thanks for Junior's offense." He. Xiao Hua smiles faintly and says, "This is just this Xiao's idea. I haven't asked Xiao Bai. If he isn't willing, then this Xiao will still not agree." Yes. Ni Quan hurriedly smiles, "Junior understands, so I ask immortal friend Xiao to kindly accept it. Little White, what do you think?" Xiao Hua turns to ask Little White Dragon. Little White Dragon hasn't opened his mouth and is met with by Bo's pleading gaze. To be honest, Little White Dragon being suppressed in Bai Qingyu is not so much suffering, but rather enjoying. Demon King Bai Qing gave his daughter to him, how can he have the nerve to take Bai Qing's life? As long as he doesn't take Bai Qing's life, then Peng Jun and Ni Quan won't lose their lives. Moreover, Little White Dragon is using Xiao Hua's name in Bai Qingyu, so Little White Dragon can't speak. Therefore, Little White Dragon says with a smile, "This matter will be decided by Big Brother. Junior has no objections." This is also good. Xiao Hua nods. This Xiao will accept Bai Qingyu, Ancient Bell Mountain and Shrouding Sky Ridge on behalf of Xiao Bai. This Xiao won't take your lives. Many thanks, Senior. Ni Quan, Bai Qing and Peng Jun finally let out a sigh of relief and bow in unison. Ni Quan cleverly says, "Junior will rush back to Ancient Bell Mountain and restrain Junior's boy. Don't block Senior's disciples' tiger's prestige. Don't be anxious." Xiao Hua says coldly, "You can avoid death, but you can't escape punishment. Although you have already revealed your demon realm, this matter is only known to the 1,000 demon sacred realm demon race. I'm afraid it won't be able to clear this Xiao's name in hidden immortal continent. This Xiao still has to think about how to punish you. Senior." Bai Qing really wants to cry but has no tears. He fiercely glares at Ni Quan and says, "What should we do to satisfy Senior? Could it be that we have to offer a humble apology?" Xiao Hua pinched his chin and said with a grin, "That's a good idea. I'll let you carry the thorns from here and go to my sect to ask for forgiveness. The humans of the hidden immortal continent will definitely know about this. If Bai Qing had arms, he would definitely slap himself in the face. He was really too talkative." Speaking of punishment, Xiao Hua actually didn't have any plans in his heart. He just felt that it would be somewhat satisfying for the 3 Yarrow kings to take out the Yarrow realm to atone for their crimes. But if he really did say it, he would be in a bit of a difficult position. Bringing a bramble and asking for punishment was nothing more than a joke. Suddenly, Xiao Hua had an idea. He looked at the 3 monster kings with a smile and asked, "Do you know about the sutra seeking extreme bliss?" "I know." Bai Qing answered honestly, "Previously, I, Bai Qingyu, had a demon who was duped to go over and become the Buddhist sect's merit. Junior's brother also went to seek revenge for this matter and has yet to return. Very good. Xiao Hua nodded. It's good that you all know. I've already killed your brother. What? Bai Qing was shocked and looked at Xiao Hua in disbelief. Chimpage. Xiao Hua said coldly, otherwise, how would this Xiao know that Bai Qingyu suppressed Xiao Bai? Sigh. Bai Qing finally understood the root of the matter. Xiao Hua said again, you don't have to hate this Xiao. You all should go and find out who instigated your brother to go to the Pure Land world. They are the main culprits. Yes, this junior understands. What else could Bai Qing say? Now is the right time. Bai Qing, this is an excellent reason. You knew that your brother was killed by the sutra-seeking extreme bliss monk, so you went to seek revenge with Peng Jun and Ni Quan. Do a round with those monks and give them some merit. Xiao Hua says with a smile, after this round, this Xiao will no longer pursue your sins. Okay. Bai Qing didn't even think and agreed without hesitation. On the contrary, Ni Quan was bewildered. He hesitated and said, Senior, we are all Yarrow Kings with 8th grade essence energy. Isn't this acting too fake? Go. Xiao Hua waved his hand. You will know when you go. Yes, this junior understands. When Ni Quan heard this, he immediately understood. He then asked, does Senior have any other instructions? Chun Zong can't be touched. Xiao Hua nodded and replied, that fire ape can't be harmed. As for the rest, you all do as you see fit. Of course, the prerequisite is that you all don't get killed by that pig. Pig? Peng Jun was shocked. Since when did the sutra-seeking extreme bliss have a pig? If this junior encounters danger, can I mention Senior's name? Ni Quan thought more than Peng Jun and asked with a smile. You all are thinking too much. Xiao Hua laughed. Once you mention this Xiao's name, that pig will slack off. You all just have to torture him. Yes, this junior understands. Ni Quan nodded vigorously and said, this junior will definitely help brother by take revenge and stop the sutra-seeking extreme bliss. Go. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, go to your respective Yarrow realms first, then prepare to head to the Pure Land world. Many thanks, Senior. Ni Quan, Peng Jun, and Bai Qing bowed respectfully. Just as Ni Quan and Peng Jun, the 2 demon kings, were about to move, Xiao Hua suddenly said, oh, right, you're not allowed to take a single item from the 2 demon realm. Ni Quan and Peng Jun, the 2 demon kings, swayed in the air and almost fell to the ground. With just a thought, everything turned into nothingness. After the 2 Yarrow kings left, Xiao Hua turned to look at Wu and Wen Chu and said with a smile, I'll have to trouble you two to call back the Fortune Gate's disciples. No problem, we'll be back soon. Wu and Wen Chu nodded. Their figures flew up and swept past Ni Quan and Peng Jun. They swept up the 2 demon kings and left. Seeing that Xiao Hua was about to call back the 200,000 human disciples, the golden-winged Great Peng was slightly puzzled, but he couldn't be bothered to care about the trivial matters of the heaven-concealing ridge. He looked at Feng Wu and said with a smile, Feng Sheng, you're a 7-star great saint of our demon race, how can you not go to the Great Holy Hall after reaching the 1,000-beast sacred grounds? Moreover, with the addition of Feng Sheng, our demon race already has 7 great saints, we still have to arrange the seats for these 7 great saint. Hehe, Peng Sheng is too polite. Feng Wu laughed and said, this saint has already fought with Peng Sheng before. If Peng Sheng hadn't broken through his bottleneck, this saint would have had a chance to take the first seat. Now that Peng Sheng is not far from breaking through the void, how can this saint be his opponent? Haha, Feng Sheng, you should go. Flying Feather Void Beast laughed and said, this saint wants to see the surprised expression of the profound armored Pentaceratops when he sees Feng Sheng. That guy has been eyeing Peng Sheng's position for a long time. He didn't expect that. He wouldn't even be able to keep his position as the 2nd great saint. Hearing the 3 great saints' words, the Pentaceratops seashell felt bitter. Although he was still a great saint of the demon race, without the bloodline of the sea god, he might not even be able to compare to the nether demonic dragon spider. However, who would care about the Pentaceratops seashell's feelings at this time? The 2 great saints only invited Feng Wu to the Great Holy Hall. Feng Wu thought for a moment, then discussed with Xiao Hua in his mind. He turned and bowed to Xiao Hua, saying, "Fellow immortal Xiao, thank you for taking care of me before. Now that I've reached the 1,000-demon sacred realm, it's time for me to make a trip to the Great Holy Hall. Let's part ways here." Xiao Hua naturally knew that Feng Wu wanted to see the Great Holy Hall, and also wanted to see if he could find the mastermind behind Peng Jun's orders. He smiled and cupped his hands, saying, "Feng Sheng is a great saint of the demon race, so of course he has to go to the Great Holy Hall. This Xiao will send Feng Sheng off. Fellow immortals, we'll meet again someday." After bowing to the Devas, Feng Wu spread his wings and soared into the sky, heading in the direction of the Great Holy Hall. "Ancestor, we'll take our leave." The golden-winged Great Peng, the flying feather-void beast, and the pentaceratops seashell didn't dare to delay. After bowing to Beixian, they also left with Feng Wu. Seeing the four great saints leave, Beixian waved her hand, and a yin and yang bracelet appeared in her hand. She gave it to Xiao Hua and said in a low voice, "This is some rare treasure of the 1,000-demon sacred realm. It's useless to me, and the Dao sect has many methods. Daoist, please keep it first." Xiao Hua looked at the yin and yang bracelet in front of him. He knew clearly that this was a gift from Beixian to thank him for returning the rainbow conch seashell. The things inside were definitely precious. Unfortunately, Beixian was too eager to show off. Even now, she still didn't want to say it out loud. Thus, Xiao Hua didn't refuse. He waved his hand and sent the yin and yang bracelet into the space. He said, "Thank you, Senior. Xiao Bai, Jade Wave." Beixian looked at the little white dragon and Jade Wave, and said, "I'm leaving. Come with me." "Yes, old ancestor." Jade Wave agreed without even thinking. However, the little white dragon shook his head and said, "Old ancestor, Junior still wants to talk to Xiao Hua about some things. Let's wait for a few days." Sigh. Jade Wave stared blankly and immediately understood. She also hurriedly nodded and said, "Indeed. Old ancestor, you go first. Boy will bring Xiao Hua over in a few days." "Okay." Seeing the little white dragon being so sentimental, how could Beixian blame him? She transmitted a few words to Jade Wave, and then nodded towards Xiao Hua. Her figure flashed, and she disappeared without a trace. Seeing that his enemies were all gone, Xiao Hua looked at the blazing sun that had already passed its peak, and then looked at the mess on the ground. He couldn't help but sigh again. "Big brother." The little white dragon said with a smile on his face, "It's all Junior's fault. I shouldn't have used Big Brother's name to move around the 1,000-demon sacred realm in the hidden immortal continent. I've caused trouble for you." Xiao Hua floated in front of the little white dragon, stretched out his arms, and said with a smile, "Between you and me, is there still a need to say these words? Your thoughts of using my name to move around, how could I not know? Big brother." The little white dragon was very happy in his heart. He also stretched out his arms and hugged Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua patted the little white dragon's back and said, "I originally wanted to give you some opportunities, but looking at that old ancestor, she also had the same intention. She's from the shell race, and also the ancestor of several great sages. Presumably, the things she prepared would be more suitable for you. I can only give you the benefits of the West Sea Dragon Palace Lord." Chapter 44:11. Haha, big brother. Little white dragon also patted Xiao Hua's back and said with a smile, "Little brother should suffer a bit for you. You are too polite." Seeing that Xiao Hua was so unguarded against little white dragon, Jade Wave's eyeballs were about to fall out. She understood very well that as long as it was a monster, as long as it was an adult, it wouldn't let other monsters get close to it. Especially the higher one's strength, the more vigilant they were. Because as long as they got close, they might be killed by other monsters if they weren't on guard. If the monster race was like this, then the human race was even more so. How could they be like Xiao Hua and Little White Dragon, one dragon and one human hugging like brothers? Of course, the two identical Xiao whose hugging made Jade Wave drunk. Unfortunately, the following sentence immediately shocked Jade Wave. Because Little White Dragon said with a smile, "However, little brother likes it." Presumably, The West Sea Dragon Palace has many beautiful sea creatures. Ha ha ha. Xiao Hua laughed and loosened his arms. This is not something I can control. You have to ask Jadewave, an ancestor. She dares to control. Little White Dragon glared at Jadewave, but Jadewave acted as if she didn't see it. Instead, she walked in front of Xiao Hua and took out a heaven and earth ring from her bosom. She respectfully handed it to Xiao Hua and said, "Big brother, this is the corpse and blood clothes left behind after Li Jing self-detonated in the Heavenly Dam water prison. I didn't know that Li Jing was Big Brother's lover, so I offended you that day. It had to be said that as long as it was a woman, no matter if it was a human or a demon, they were all exquisite." Jadewave simply didn't argue with Little White Dragon and only spoke to Xiao Hua. She knew that Little White Dragon trusted Xiao Hua the most. She only needed to curry favor with Xiao Hua. She simply didn't need to compete with other women for Little White Dragon to obediently listen to her word. At the very least, Little White Dragon wouldn't dare to neglect or abandon her. Sure enough, Xiao Hua saw that Jadewave was so honest that she even spoke of her malice towards Fairy Jing. He smiled slightly. Although his smile was extremely bitter, the praise in his eyes was obvious. After receiving the cosmic bracelet, Xiao Hua did not release his spiritual force to explore it. He stared at the cosmic bracelet for a long time, as if he was looking at the scene on Heartbreak Mountain from a long time ago. From this moment onwards, there will be no distractions in my heart, no emotions to depend on, no heart to depend on, no soul to return to. However, when people are in front of me, there is no longer a shadow in my eyes. A journey on the mountain, a journey on the water, I walk towards the place of loneliness, the shadow of the night invisible. The wind blows, the snow blows, the noise shatters my heart's dream, there is no such sound in this world. Fairy Jing's singing, the setting sun, and the red clouds in the sky seemed to be vivid in his mind. Fairy Jing's delicate body trembled slightly as she opened her mouth. The scene of the unforgettable love water turning into a stream of water and falling into her mouth was revived. "You. Who are you? Why did he look so familiar? Where is this?" Fairy Jing's curious and puzzled eyes appeared in front of Xiao Hua again. "Oh, all right. Although I don't know who you are, looking at you makes me feel at ease. My name is Li Jing, and my Buddhist name is Fairy Jing. I'm in charge of a seaside country in a corner of the hidden immortal continent. If fellow Daoist arrives at the seaside that day, you can come to my country for a chat. Farewell." Fairy Jing's unhurried voice sounded in Xiao Hua's ear again. That distant figure was so far away, and that faintly discernible voice was so faintly discernible. At this moment, it unexpectedly became an eternal farewell. In particular, the unforgettable love water. Fairy Jing deliberately wanted to forget Xiao Hua, but as it happened, when she saw the little white dragon's appearance, all her feelings surfaced again. Fortune made fools of people. For Xiao Hua, and also for her own mistake, Fairy Jing used her life to make up for it. Big brother. How could the little white dragon not understand the pain in Xiao Hua's heart? He flew in front of Xiao Hua and explained the cause of the matter. He didn't talk about Xiao Hua, only muttering in a low voice, "This time, we will be separated by yin and yang. Even if I have a myriad of thoughts, they will all turn into a flower of the yellow springs. I will have no one to tell the hidden grievances in my heart." Even Jadewave, who already knew the course of events, couldn't help but shed some tears. Even the Celestials and other clones sighed endlessly. In the end, the little white dragon said, before Fairy Jing left, she had a wish. "What?" "Quickly say it." Xiao Hua hastily raised his head and asked. "As long as I can do it, I will definitely do it. This." The little white dragon smiled bitterly. Fairy Jing's request, "I'm afraid Big Brother can't do it in a short time." "Quickly say it." Xiao Hua asked sternly. Fairy Jing only wants to reincarnate and no longer be the descendant of some monster race. She only wants to be a clean person, even if she doesn't have any cultivation and only wants to live a quiet life. The little white dragon said solemnly. "Ari." Xiao Hua sighed, but a moment later, his eyes lit up again. He said in shock, "You mean, hehe, not bad." The little white dragon laughed. "Big Brother can't do it now, but he should be able to in the future. As the little white dragon spoke, between his eyebrows, in front of his dragon horn, several strands of soul surged. An extremely small dark green ball of light flew out. As soon as that ball of light appeared, it immediately wanted to dissipate. How could Xiao Hua let this ball of light dissipate? He released his netherworld origin power and instantly sent this ball of light into the dark side of the space. He chose the root of the underworld fruit tree and placed it there. When he saw a transparent underworld pearl slowly appear, Fairy Jing's soul quietly fell asleep. Only then did he feel at ease and leave the space. Big brother. The netherworld origin power was so powerful. The little white dragon had cultivated soul techniques, so how could he not sense it? He asked somewhat hesitantly. No need for the future, Xiao Hua said proudly. Fairy Jing's wish can be realized by this Xiao right now. Ah! The little white dragon was stunned, and Jadewave was even more stunned. However, Xiao Hua's gaze swept over Jadewave, and he said indifferently, this matter can only be known by people this Xiao trusts. This Xiao doesn't want others to know. Bai Bo smiled sweetly. With such a resourceful big brother and his trust in her, how could she possibly think of divulging it? Big brother, you really are my big brother. You are too powerful. The little white dragon could only shake his head in admiration. He sighed and said, what kind of spirit pills have you taken in the past 200 years? I can't believe your cultivation base has reached such a level. Damn it, even if I want to impersonate you in the future, I'm afraid I can't. Then be yourself. Xiao Hua said smilingly, the Dragon Emperor of the Western Ocean Dragon Palace is still waiting for you. Good, good. Hurry up and let the Dragon King of the Western Ocean wash his ass clean, and wait for me to kick him. The little white dragon laughed. With your cultivation base, you are far weaker than Ao Hong. Reverend Yun twitched his mouth and said mockingly. The little white dragon could not be compared with Reverend Yun before, and the gap between them was even greater. With a crying face, he said, isn't it all my big brother's fault? Why didn't you bring your little brother? TSK, hurry up and find that patriarch of yours. Reverend Yun said disdainfully, she might have some good ideas. Oh, don't be so hasty. Xiao Hua suddenly thought of something and transmitted his voice. About the incident at Yellow Flower Ridge, haven't you recovered your memory yet? Not completely. The little white dragon said solemnly, that seal is very powerful, and I can only break it when my overall strength has reached a certain level. Oh, if Big Brother is in a hurry, you can try to break it. Xiao Hua thought for a moment, then shook his head and said, I'm not in a hurry. Besides, this seal was made by that man. I'll try not to break it if I can, or it might affect your memory. Of course, if possible, you can ask Patriarch. She might have some ideas. Ah, she. The little white dragon was surprised. How could she possibly have some ideas? Don't ask. Xiao Hua smiled mysteriously and said, just trust me. All right. Naturally, the little white dragon believed Xiao Hua's words without a doubt. Let's go with Jadewave for now. Xiao Hua patted the little white dragon on the shoulder and said, when you have the overall strength, you can follow me and roam the 3 continents. All right, I'll definitely do my best for Big Brother. The little white dragon nodded vigorously, then gave Jadewave a glare and said, hurry up and lead the way. Big Brother, I'll take my leave. Jadewave respectfully saluted Xiao Hua, then flew away with the little white dragon. All right, fellow Taoist. Seeing that the world was quiet, Xiao Hua smiled and said, you all should go back and rest. Damn, this Bayesian is too powerful, I also need to meditate. Haha, that's right, this Bai Qingyu is ours anyway. Fellow Taoists can find a place to meditate in this demon territory. Daoist Yun laughed, but then he looked into the distance and said, unfortunately, fellow Daoist Wu and the others will be back soon. Fellow Taoists should wait until you're done. Daoist Yun smiled and disappeared into the void. Archdevil Venerable Shur, celestial being, and the others also entered the void. Not long after, Daoist Wu and Wen Chu returned together. In fact, since Xiao Hua appeared in Bai Qingyu, ordered 200,000 Fortune Gate's disciples to attack Shrouding Sky Ridge and Ancient Bell Mountain, joined forces with his clones to fight the 3 demonic beast race saints, and finally attracted the power of the divine punishment to defeat Bazian. It only took a few hours. The 200,000 Fortune Gates disciples had yet to reach the two demon territories. Daoist Wu and Wen Chu were carrying two demonic beast kings, and their teleportation speed was extremely fast, so they naturally could return at this time. Daoist Wu and Wen Chu were outside the great seven-colored radiance shell world. Together with Feng Wu, they held the three demonic beast race great saints hostage, so they didn't suffer any special injuries. Seeing the two clones, Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said with a smile, "Fellow Daoist Wu, please go back and rest. I have something to say to fellow Daoist Wen Chu." "All right." Daoist Wu didn't ask any more questions and returned to the void. Wen Chu was puzzled and asked, "Is there anything else, fellow Daoist?" Xiao Hua smiled and said, "When the three demonic beast race great saints saw the three demonic beast kings offering Bai Qingyu, shrouding Sky Ridge, and Ancient Bell Mountain to me, they didn't stop them. Of course, they didn't put the three demonic beast kings' territories in their eyes. More importantly, they felt that the Thousand Beasts sacred realm is the demonic beast race's territory, and we humans have no place here. Even if we obtain the three demonic beast territories today, we will have to abandon them in the future. Therefore, if we want to control the three demonic beast territories, we need a transmission array. Among all the fellow Taoists, other than fellow Daoist Lei, fellow Daoist Wu, and fellow Daoist Lei are proficient in the transmission array. We will have to trouble fellow Daoist now." Chapter 44:12. Haha, so that's how it is. Wen Chu laughed. Previously, fellow immortal Lei Ting often bragged about how powerful the transmission array he built was. "I've long wanted to compete with him. Today, I'll take this opportunity to dampen his spirit." "That's great." Xiao Hua nodded. The Grand Cosmos Shifting Token is still in fellow Daoist Lei Ting's hands. However, with fellow Daoist Wu's technique, the Grand Cosmos Shifting Token doesn't seem that important anymore. After fellow Daoist builds the transmission array, you can leave behind a spiritual sense mark. After you get the Grand Cosmos Shifting Token, you can connect the two transmission arrays together. "I understand." Wen Chu squinted his eyes and used the clear sight technique. He looked around and said with a smile, "Bai Qingyu has been reduced to this state. I'm afraid it's not suitable to build a transmission array. Shall I go further and take a look?" "All right." Xiao Hua agreed. "Fellow Daoist, you can start building the transmission array first. After I settle the matters here, I'll bring the other fellow Taoists to help you." "Well said, well said," Wen Chu said. A cloud appeared under his feet and he flew into the distance. After Wen Chu left, Xiao Hua raised his eyes and looked at the sun in the west. He sighed in his heart. He raised his hand and took out the universe bracelet with Fairy Jing's bloody clothes and remains. After looking at it for a moment, he said in a low voice, "Fairy Jing, although Qing's death wasn't my fault, Qing died for me. Since Qing's soul has entered the cycle of reincarnation, it's time for her flesh and blood to be buried in peace." Thinking of this, Xiao Hua released his spiritual sense, wanting to find a place with beautiful scenery to bury her. Unfortunately, Bai Qingyu had long been destroyed. Where could he find a suitable place? Forget it. When this matter is over, I'll find a place for Fairy Jing to rest in peace. Xiao Hua sighed and put away the universe bracelet. He stood in the air and waited for the Fortune Gates disciples. At this time, the heaven and earth origin energy within tens of thousands of miles was still chaotic. Countless strands of heaven and earth origin energy condensed into a fierce wind that rushed towards Bai Qingyu. It was the biting cold wind. Xiao Hua stood alone under the sun. His figure was elongated, and his Daoist robes fluttered in the wind. People often say that a general's success is built on the bones of 10,000 soldiers. When a cultivator cultivates to the highest level, their prestige reaches the highest level. Isn't this the same? Bai Qingyu, the Fortune Gates disciples who had slaughtered close to 1,000,000 demonic beasts, and the Fortune Gates disciples who had been killed by the 1,000 Sacred Realm demonic beasts, had all become the bones that had created Daoist Xiao's name that had shaken the three mainland. Although Xiao Hua had just grasped the creation realm and was gradually peering into yin and yang, he was still unable to let the souls of these pitiful disciples rest in peace. Watching the setting sun, Xiao Hua actually felt a chill down his spine. He shrunk his neck, but just as he was about to release his divine sense to check on the Fortune Gate disciples, a faint smile appeared on his face. With a wave of his hand, he brought Little Black and Little Yellow out of Shenhua continent. "Daddy, Daddy!" Little Black and Little Yellow both shouted and landed on Xiao Hua's shoulders. One used its tongue to lick Xiao Hua's ears while the other used its 2 claws to scratch Xiao Hua's hair. It was no different from when they were young. Hearing Goldie call him Daddy, Xiao Hua faintly smiled. He knew that the 2 little things didn't go out for nothing. "Why did the 2 of you also come to buy Qingyu?" Xiao Hua raised his hand to rub the 2 little things' heads and asked with a smile. After all, time was tight, so the 2 little things only gave a rough account of what had happened in Bai Qingyu. Boy heard that Daddy was suppressed by Qingyu's Beast King, so he naturally came to save Daddy. Little Yellow's mouth was fast, and he had already finished Xiao Hua's words. It took him a full hour to tell Xiao Hua everything that had happened after he and Little Black left Xiao Hua. Although the 2 little things were standing on his shoulders, and the 2 little things' 200 years of training was similar to the training of ordinary qi refinement or foundation establishment cultivators. Although there were some dangers during that period, and they had gone through several life and death situations, overall, it was more daunting than dangerous. It was a pity that he was too concerned, and Xiao Hua couldn't help but shudder. He regretted letting the 2 little things out. At the end of the story, Little Yellow suddenly asked curiously, "Oh right, Daddy, you're so powerful now, how could you be suppressed by Qingyu's Beast King?" "That shouldn't be Daddy." Little Black didn't interrupt, and only now did he say with confidence, "If I'm not wrong, it should be that dragon-shaped soul. Otherwise, there's no way we couldn't tell." Ian, Daddy said it was his good friend." Little Yellow naturally understood and said with a smile, "It must be him." Xiao Hua smiled. He already knew that he was wrong. If the 2 little things were always by his side, Little Yellow would probably have to call him Mommy. How could they tell the little white dragon apart? "You guessed correctly," Xiao Hua replied. "The little white dragon has successfully condensed his body. He's now called Xiao Bai." "Where is he?" Little Yellow jumped on Xiao Hua's shoulder and shouted, "Hurry up and call him out. He actually dared to lie to us. Teach him a lesson." "Hehe, he's not here now." Xiao Hua replied, "He went to a place. When you see him again, I'm afraid you won't be able to defeat him." "How can you teach him a lesson?" We want to go too, Little Yellow shouted, "Daddy, I really didn't expect there to be so many experts in the 1,000 Demons Sacred Realm. Boy also wants to go there to cultivate." Xiao Hua's heart stirred. He thought of the bloodline inheritance and essence left behind by the Truth Listener beast and the Heaven-swallowing beast after they were killed. He thought to himself, "Damn it, could it be that this is also a kind of karma? Is this Little Yellow and Little Black's opportunity?" Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, "You don't have to go there. Daddy has a way to let you surpass the little white dragon. However, there's not enough time now. How about I let you cultivate after I'm done with the matters here?" Okay. Little Yellow shouted and jumped on Xiao Hua's shoulder. "Surpass the little white dragon, surpass the little white dragon, teach him a lesson." On the other hand, Little Black replied steadily, "Everything will be decided by Father." Seeing the 2 little ones like this, Xiao Hua's mood was great. He smiled and said, "Little Yellow, do you still remember Dai? Who is Dai?" Little Yellow was stunned and asked curiously, "Should I remember?" Xiao Hua smiled. When Dai hugged Little Yellow that day, Little Yellow was dying. How could it know Dai's name? Moreover, when Dai entered the space, Dai was dying, and Little Yellow was still unconscious. When Little Yellow and Little Black grew up, he separated Dai from the Shenhua continent. How could Little Yellow remember Dai? "It's the girl who hugged you before you met Daddy," Xiao Hua reminded. "It's also the big white goose lying beside you when you were at home." "Oh, I know. Little Yellow immediately understood and asked, "She's called Dai? If that's the case, She seemed to have taken care of boy. Where did she go after that? Wait a moment. Xiao Hua smiled and sent Daya out of the Shenhua continent. Greetings, sage. As soon as Daya landed in the air, she couldn't be bothered to look elsewhere and hurriedly bowed. Get up, Daya. Take a look at who this is. Xiao Hua smiled and raised his hand to help Daya up. Daya felt a little strange, but when her gaze fell on Little Yellow, a smile immediately appeared on her face and she called out, Little Yellow? You're back. Haha, Sister Daya, so you're called Daya. Little Yellow was also familiar with Daya's aura and wagged its tail as it landed in Daya's arms. Daya instantly returned to the time when she was a child. She happily hugged Little Yellow in her arms and lovingly patted Little Yellow's head. It was rare for her to feel calm again. People were always strange. Even Daya, who was from the Flying Feather clan of the 10,000 Demon Realm, was the same. In her memory, there was always an unforgettable time. This time, whether it was due to coincidence or a cycle, but the memory of this time brought her an incomparable sense of security. Daya followed the goddess of the 10,000 Demon Realm to the Dawn Rain continent. Although there was Xian Yuan's protection, there was always a feeling of being homeless. On the Dawn Rain continent, she occasionally encountered the seriously injured Little Yellow. Little Yellow's pitiful experience made Daya throw her own misery aside and wholeheartedly care for Little Yellow. It could be said that it awakened the maternal instinct in Daya's heart in advance. After Little Yellow left, Daya was still reluctant to part with it. When she saw Little Yellow again in Xiao Hua's space, the feeling of despair and anxiety in her heart suddenly disappeared. Little Yellow made her feel safe. After thousands of years passed, Daya became more and more scrupulous. Meeting Yuan Ya was love. Love was worrying about gains and losses, but it was never about safety. Even when she saw Xiao Hua again, Daya didn't have much of an impression of Xiao Hua. It was only because of Little Yellow that Daya felt at ease with Xiao Hua's strength. It was a kind of worship and respect. At this time, when Daya saw Little Yellow again, a special person who brought with him special memories, Daya's heart suddenly calmed down. It was even more tranquil than when she returned to Xian Yuan's side. An indescribable sense of security filled Daya's heart more than ever. 2 tears of joy couldn't help but fall from the corner of Daya's eyes. It was not the feeling of familial love, but it was the feeling of family love that made Daya's body glow with a layer of holy brilliance. Sister. A drop of tear fell on Little Yellow's body. Little Yellow was startled and hurriedly looked up. When he saw Daya's appearance, he cried out, "What's wrong? Who bullied you? Tell me quickly, Little Black, and I will go and vent your anger for you. Don't be afraid, Little Black and I are very powerful now. If the 2 of us can't do it, there's still Father. He's very powerful. I'm afraid he's even fiercer than the great saint of the demon race." While speaking, Little Yellow stretched out his paw and wiped away the tears on Daya's face. Feeling the warmth of the furry paw, Daya showed a happy smile, patted Little Yellow's head and said, "Silly child, sister is crying because of happiness. Now that Daoist Master Xiao is here, who would dare to bully sister?" Chapter 44:13. Hee, that's good, that's good. Hearing this, Goldie stretched out a claw from Daya's arms and shouted to Little Black, "Little Black, come here, this is Sister Daya. I've told you before. I know, I've seen her at home." Little Black was not as excited as Goldie. He flew closer and wagged his tail. "Greetings, Sister Daya." "Hello, Little Black." Daya replied with a smile. She did not hug Little Black. It was not that Daya's chest was not big enough, it was that her heart was not big enough. "Sister, where have you been for the past few hundred years? Isn't our family doing well? How did you learn to run away from home?" Goldie did not have any scruples in front of Daya and asked directly. Daya was startled. She raised her head slightly and looked at Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua only looked at her with a smile and didn't answer. Daya's mind quickly turned. She smiled and said to Goldie, "It's a bit boring at home. Sister is going out for a walk." "Hey, that's right, it's not good to stay at home all the time." Goldie spoke quickly and said, "Little Black and I also came out, but I don't know where sister went." Daya was a bit speechless. She could tell Goldie what she saw from the Thousand Demon Realm to Dawn Rain continent, but she did not want to lie to Goldie. Xiao Hua smiled and said, "After Yuan Ye returns, I'll let him tell you about it." "Ayo, father, Yuan Ye is still here? Didn't he leave with his master? What about his wretched master? Is he still so lecherous?" Goldie's words could not be stopped. It was like a torrential river. How was it similar to the ferocious Deity beast in the great desolate continent? "Right, how is Yuan Ye and that dear Wu? It's been a few hundred years. Their children should know how to play soy sauce now, right?" Xiao Hua held his forehead and smiled bitterly. When he was young, Goldie was talkative, but Xiao Hua thought it was cute. Who would have thought that Goldie would become a chatterbox now? "Ye's master is dead. Ye is now your father's disciple." On the contrary, Daya replied calmly, "Dear Wu also left Ye. If there are no accidents, she should have died a few hundred years ago. They can't have children playing soy sauce. Oyo. There are so many stories." Goldie was extremely excited, as if his gossipy heart had been revived. He cried out, "Back then, Brother Ye was completely infatuated with that dear Wu." At this point, Goldie suddenly froze as if he had understood something. He said in surprise, "Sister, you're called Brother Ye. Ye? Ioro, sister, how can Brother Ye be worthy of you?" He was really bored. Out of 3 questions, he couldn't even answer a single one. Moreover, his cultivation was also extremely poor. "Don't look for him. I think Brother Liu is not bad. He's handsome and has a glib tongue." While they were talking, a loud and clear dragon roar came from the distance. In the sky, dozens of colorful dragons flew over under the stars and moon. They were majestic, and the golden dragon in front was even more eye-catching. However, when they flew closer, a powerful aura appeared beside the golden dragon. This aura was restrained and not ostentatious, as if the owner of this aura was deliberately keeping a low profile. Even so, the aura that leaked out was enough to suppress the dragon's aura. A bloody, soul-devouring, and terrifying aura was emitted from that aura. "Brother Ye?" Goldie was dumbfounded. He whispered, "When did this guy become so powerful?" "He's not just powerful." Blackie curled his lips and said, "His ability to pick up girls is even higher." Xiao Hua, who was beside them, heard it clearly. He was so shocked that he almost fell from the sky. He was very surprised in his heart. Damn it. Where did these 2 brats go? Where did they learn these words? The dragons were the first to arrive, but they didn't dare to approach. When they were a few miles away from Xiao Hua, they stopped and turned into their human forms. They bowed and said, "Greetings, Dragon Master Xiao." "Good, thank you for your hard work." Xiao Hua nodded slightly and said. Yuan Ye, Ao Shang, and Ao Zhon flew over. Yuan Ye bowed and said, "Master, En." Xiao Hua looked at Yuan Ye and asked, "How many dragons did you kill?" "Not a single one." Yuan Ye replied, "They were scared out of their wits by Master. I waved my demonic spear and they all surrendered." "Good." Xiao Hua didn't ask Yuan Ye anymore. He waved his hand and asked Yuan Ye to leave. He then turned to ask Ao Sheng and Ao Zhon, "What did these dragons say? Who sent them?" Ao Sheng and Ao Zhon didn't dare to delay. They bowed and said, "Greetings, Dragon Master. Let me tell you, they themselves don't know who gave the orders." It's not out of my expectations." Xiao Hua nodded. He wasn't surprised at all. Ao Sheng said again, "Let's talk about this after I return to Dragon Island and see Long Ce on the island. There should be some clues." "Little Elder, you're too optimistic." Xiao Hua smiled and said, "If there were any clues in Long Ce, why would Ao Jiao let you be the bait?" Unfortunately, Ao Jiao underestimated this person. He didn't expect dozens of dragons to appear at once. "If it wasn't for me, you would have been eaten by them." "Damn it." Ao Sheng said angrily, "When I return to Dragon Island, I will definitely expose that bastard's face." "What right do you have?" Xiao Hua said coldly. "Even Ao Jiao doesn't dare to show his cards." "What right do you have?" I. Ao Sheng heard and couldn't help but feel dejected. Ao Zhon smiled and said, "Little Elder, don't worry. Don't you still have me? Even if I'm not strong enough, there's still Dragon Master Xiao. I feel useless. Ao Sheng raised his head painfully and said, I want to be like Yuan Ya and step on that piece of shit under my feet to vent my anger. Ao Zhan shrugged and expressed his helplessness. On the path of strength, if it wasn't hard work, then it was opportunity. Ao Zhan obtained the inheritance of the dragons in the relic realm. That was an opportunity. But even if there was an opportunity, he still had to work hard. He wanted to stand above the Dragon Palace. It wasn't something that could be done in a short time, let alone Ao Sheng. Daya, I'm back. Yuan Ya flew to Daya's side. There wasn't much of a smile on his face. He only said one sentence and didn't ask how Daya came out of Shenhua continent. Then, he looked at Goldie and Blackie and said, You two are back too. Look. Goldie said unhappily, We haven't seen each other for hundreds of years, and he still doesn't look happy. What's so good about him? Sister, don't want him. I'll find you a better one. Brother Liu isn't enough, but there's still Wang Bianfei. That little guy is outstanding. He must be a handsome young master now. Yuan Ya was stunned. He glanced at Goldie but didn't react. Daya smiled and ignored Goldie. She patted his head and said to Yuan Ya, You're not hurt, are you? No. Yuan Ya answered with one word. Good. Daya also answered with one word. Both of their eyes were full of smiles. Sigh, there's no other way. Seeing that the two of them were silent, Goldie was also helpless. He cried out, A fresh flower stuck in cow dung, a tortoise and a mung bean, they're compatible. Blackie said from the side. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and looked at Ao Sheng, who was in pain. He muttered in his heart. Ao Sheng was the current dragon body of the dragon god of the primitive continent. Xiao Hua obtained the dragon bones and other things left behind by the dragon god in the primitive continent. These things could be said to be Ao Sheng's, but they could also be said to not be Ao Sheng's. After all, it had been 2 lives. However, Ao Sheng was very affectionate. When he heard that Xiao Hua was suppressed by Monster King Bai Qingyu, he ignored his own safety and came to rescue him. Of course, Ao Jiao calculated it. If not for Ao Sheng's stubbornness, how could Ao Jiao bear to let Ao Sheng take the risk? Based on Ao Sheng's affection, Xiao Hua couldn't say that the dragon bones and other things had nothing to do with Ao Sheng, but the problem was that the things left behind by the dragon god were useful to Daoist Yun. The dragon god had a dispute with Jiang Lewis Metria Buddha in his previous life. Xiao Hua didn't know what this dispute was, and he didn't have the right to know. But Xiao Hua had the right to decide what the dragon god left behind. Now that Jiang Liu had abandoned the position of Buddha Lord in her previous life, it was even more impossible for Xiao Hua to give all of the dragon god's things to Ao Sheng. Besides, even if Xiao Hua wanted to give everything to Ao Sheng now, with Ao Sheng's current cultivation and dragon body, it was impossible for him to get it. These things were enough to make all the dragons go crazy. They would only make Ao Sheng die faster. Since he had made his decision, Xiao Hua smiled and asked, Ao Sheng, I have an idea. Are you willing to accept it? Haha, I already knew that Dragon Master had an idea. Tell me. When Ao Sheng heard this, the pain on his face disappeared like the wind blowing away the clouds. Damn it. Xiao Hua touched his nose and smiled bitterly. I seem to have fallen into your trap. Hee. Ao Sheng glanced at Ao Zhan and said, Ao Zhan was just an Eastern Sea Dragon Guard before, but now he is so powerful. I asked him many times, but he refused to say anything. But do I still have to ask? Even a blind person can see that it is related to Dragon Master. Compared to 200 years ago, Dragon Master's strength is even more different. If I don't look for Dragon Master, who else can I look for? You are my Dragon Clan's Dragon Master. Ao Zhan also smiled and said, Spiritual Master, Ao Sheng is definitely a Dragon Clan member who is very affectionate. It is rare in my Dragon Clan. He is also very concerned about you. If you can help him, please do your best to help him. How can I not know about his cunning mind? Xiao Hua smiled and said, Back then in the stacked Jade Legacy realm, I already knew. Hee. Hearing Xiao Hua mention the stacked Jade Legacy realm, Ao Sheng's heart calmed down. He knew that Xiao Hua had already agreed. But Xiao Hua's face turned serious and said, "You have to make a dragon oath in front of me first." "No problem." Ao Sheng said without hesitation, "I will never betray Dragon Master in this life. I will not betray Dragon Island. I will." Chapter 44:14. That's not it. Xiao Hua waved his hand in annoyance. Just as he was about to explain, he thought, everything in this world has karma. The karma between Lord Dragon God and the previous incarnation of Maitreya Buddha is their own matter. If I force Ao Sheng to swear a dragon oath not to take revenge on Jiang Liuer, wouldn't that be interfering with their karma? This is unfair to Ao Sheng. Forget it, let's not talk about this anymore. Ao Sheng asked curiously, "What does Master Long want to say?" "Haha, there's no need." Xiao Hua laughed, "Even if I don't trust Ao Jiao, how can I not trust Ao Sheng? This so-called dragon oath, let's not talk about it anymore." Xiao Hua. Ao Sheng was really touched. He actually called Xiao Hua by his name. "I will never betray you in the future. You dare." Xiao Hua glared at him, "When the time comes, I'll slap you into meat pace." Ao Sheng shrunk his neck and curled his lips. "You're right, with your strength, who dares? Since you've agreed, then it's easy." Xiao Hua raised his head and said to the group of dragons, "Return to the Dragon Island and inform the Dragon Hall of this matter. Ao Sheng will cultivate with this Xiao, and when he succeeds, this Xiao will let him return to the Dragon Island." "Yes. We obey Master Long's order." How could the group of dragons dare to disobey? They urged their bodies to fly away. "Wait." Xiao Hua raised his hand and said, "Don't be in a hurry to return now, wait for my Fortune Gate disciples to set off, then all of you will return together." "Yes." The dragons were overjoyed. The Fortune Gate disciples were an army of 200,000, who would dare to face them head-on? Then this junior will return with the Fortune Gate disciples. Ao Zhan smiled, "Actually, this junior also wants to cultivate with Master Long." "You don't have to." Xiao Hua laughed. "Your opportunity is different from Ao Sheng's." "Oh, there's one more thing." Xiao Hua then told Ao Zhan about Jiang Hong leading the group of dragons back to the Heavenly Paradise River. In the end, he said, Jiang Hong and Liu Yi are this Xiao's disciples, and they are in charge of the Heavenly Paradise River. They will help you return to the Dragon Hall. Jiang Hong may have some ambition, but she is a woman, after all, this Xiao. Liu Yi, to restrain her, you don't have to worry too much about it. Others may not know your opportunity, but how could this Xiao not know it? Your strength will surpass hers sooner or later. When Ao Zhan heard this news, he was both surprised and happy. He didn't dare to believe what Xiao Hua had said. But when he looked at Yuan Ya, who was not far away, he didn't know what Yuan Ya was like before, but now, Yuan Ya was far beyond his reach. If Yuan Ya was like this, why couldn't Jiang Hong be like this? Why couldn't Jiang Hong and Liu Yi's descendants do the same? The assistance that Xiao Hua spoke of wasn't just assistance, it was simply the main force. Ao Zhan took a deep breath, bowed, and said, "Junior, thanks Master Long. Now that I think about it, getting to know Master Long was really the wisest decision of this junior's life. There's a saying in the human race, if you treat me like a country knight, I'll definitely repay you like a country knight." Xiao Hua smiled and said, "Although this sentence is not appropriate to use here, it still means returning a plum for a peach. This Xiao is still willing to leave his trust to a brave man. Yes, this junior understands. This junior will also carefully deal with the worries that senior has mentioned. This kind of thing isn't rare in my dragon race. Senior, please rest assured." Ao Zhan carefully agreed to the matter regarding Jiang Hong. Also, Xiao Hua transmitted again, "This Xiao wants Little White Dragon to be the master of the West Sea." Little White Dragon? Ao Zhan stared blankly, then smiled and said, "Senior, rest assured. This is what Little White Dragon deserves. At the same time, it's also what this junior wants. This junior can only step into the Dragon Palace Hall after controlling part of the power of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Senior's thoughts coincide with this junior's. Ha ha. Xiao Hua laughed loudly, then it's decided. Xiao Hua. Daoist Xiao? While Xiao Hua was laughing, another human cultivator flew over from the distance. Before they even got close, a woman's voice was already heard. Amidst the surprise, there was uncertainty, and even more weakness. Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and looked over. It was really Xian Songzi and Daoist Jingting, the two seventh tribulation scattered nascent souls, bringing Zun Kong, Zhong Daoran, Zhai Xingzi, and Gusu Chodi over. At this moment, Gusu Chodi was nestled in Zhai Xingzi's arms. Her face was bright red and her eyes were as bright as stars. Xiao Hua's heart warmed. With a smile on his face, he floated over to welcome them. Seeing that Xiao Hua had only taken a step and his figure had already crossed 100 miles, he stood still and cupped his hands, saying, I thank the four of you for coming to the 1,000 demons sacred realm to hell. Hehe, I knew it. Gusu Chodi's face was pressed against Zhai Xingzi's chest. She didn't directly answer Xiao Hua, but instead said coquettishly, although Xiao Hua is already the most powerful cultivator of the 3 continents, he definitely won't change from the past. Zhai Xingzi smiled bitterly. This Xiao Hua in front of them wasn't the same nascent soul cultivator as them in the past. He was a human Mahayana cultivator. A human Mahayana cultivator. Just thinking about it made Zhai Xingzi's blood boil. He didn't know how many years it had been since a Daoist Mahayana cultivator appeared in the 3 continents. But now, he saw and knew that this Mahayana cultivator was a fellow cultivator who had gone through life and death with him. How could he not be moved? Zhai Xingzi patted Gusu Chodi's back. He stopped with Xian Songzi and said respectfully, Zhai Xingzi greets Daoist Xiao. Gusu Chodi moved away from Zhai Xingzi with difficulty. She raised her hand slightly and said with a smile, I'm heavily injured and can't greet you properly. Please forgive me, Daoist Xiao. Master. Xian Songzi stopped and let go of Zhai Xingzi. He bowed and saluted. Daoist Jingting also called out and stood together with Xian Songzi. Zhong Daoran greets Senior Xiao. Zhong Daoran now prostrated himself in admiration of Xiao Hua. That day, he still wanted to join hands with Xiao Hua, Zun Kong, and Zhai Xingzi to become the 4 heroes of the hidden immortal continent. But now, he couldn't even become Xiao Hua's disciple. How could he be compared to the 4 heroes? Greetings, Daoist Xiao. Zun Kong didn't think as much as Zhong Daoran, but he also saluted respectfully. He didn't dare to be negligent. Xiao Hua smiled and took out a medicinal pill from his bosom. He handed it to Zhai Xingzi and said, This is a medicinal pill refined by me. It's also useful for Confucian cultivators. Fellow Daoist Gusu only forcefully activated her true qi and suffered a backlash from my Daoist magic tool. Her meridians were only damaged. You don't have to worry too much. Fellow Daoist Gusu took my disciple's medicinal pill earlier. I'm afraid it's not quite right for her. Oh, this Daoist magic tool should be the one you obtained from Senior Kang Lung's cave, right? Hihi, Daoist's eyes are indeed sharp. With one look, you can tell that I was injured by a Daoist magic tool. That magic tool is Senior Kang Lung's. Gusu Chodi was overjoyed. When Zhai Xingzi brought the medicinal pill over, she swallowed it in one gulp. Immediately, clouds surged around her body. Wisps of righteous qi appeared out of nowhere and slowly entered her body. My humble wife is like this. Daoist, please forgive me. Seeing Gusu Chodi take the medicinal pill in front of Xiao Hua and heal her injuries, Zhai Xingzi was afraid that Xiao Hua would be angry and hurriedly explained. How could Xiao Hua put on airs in front of his old friend? He waved his hand and said, Fellow Daoists, there's no need to be so polite. Fellow Daoist Gusu, the sooner you take the medicinal pill, the better. Moreover, you and I are old friends. Normally, you can just call me Daoist. Moreover, you 3 fellow Daoists came to the 1,000 demon sacred realm from afar to save me. I can see this favor clearly. We don't dare. Zhong Daoran hurriedly replied, Back then, we received a lot of Daoist's kindness. In these hundreds of years, we didn't have the chance to repay it. Since Daoist when Ting is in trouble, how can we just stand by and watch? Although our cultivation is limited, 4 fellow Daoist, we are willing to go through water and tread on fire. Damn it. It's a pity that before we could even get close to Bai Qingyu, we were schemed against by the Xianhuang order. We were almost killed by them several times. Exalted Zun Kong said with lingering fear. Zhai Xingzi also shook his head with a bitter smile. Indeed. We were only thinking about the obstruction of the demon race in the Thousand Demon Sacred Realm. We never thought that the Xianhuang order of the Confucian cultivator would use the news of Daoist being suppressed to kill us. Now that I think about it, it was really dangerous. We wanted to help but were powerless. In the end, if Daoist didn't help us, we would have already lost our lives in Bai Qingyu. Zhong Daoran sighed. Xiao Hua said loudly, there's no need for strength. It's enough as long as you have the heart. Fellow Daoists, I will remember this favor. If you have any difficulties in the future, please don't hesitate to find me. The 3 were overjoyed. This was the promise of the supreme cultivator of the 3 continents. The 3 bowed to express their thanks. When Zhai Xingzi stood up, he said somewhat embarrassedly, Daoist, I have a presumptuous request. I hope Daoist can agree. Oh, it's okay. Fellow Daoist, just say it. As long as I can do it. Xiao Hua was startled and hurriedly replied. He. Zun Kong and Zhong Daoran both laughed. Zhai Xingzi's face was red. He looked at Gusu Qiudi who was recuperating not far away and said, Chioa has followed I for hundreds of years. Daoist disciples don't care about this, but Confucian cultivators can't. Chioa doesn't say it, but there's always a knot in her heart. I want to ask Daoist, to accompany I to the Gusu family, to ask for their hand in marriage. Oh, this. Hearing this, Xiao Hua's expression became extremely awkward. He shook his head and said, I'm a Daoist cultivator. Although I'm a Mahayana cultivator, it doesn't conform to the rules of Confucian cultivators. Zhai Xingzi was extremely depressed. He didn't expect Xiao Hua to not agree. He could only smile and said, if Daoist feels that it's not suitable, why don't you send a disciple? Those disciples are also Daoist cultivators. They're not suitable. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, Ah. Zhai Xingzi opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. Xiao Hua looked at Zhai Xingzi's anxious expression and said slowly, how about this, when we return to Hidden Immortal Continent, I'll ask a literary star to accompany you to the Gusu family to ask for their hand in marriage. How about that? What? Literary star? Zhai Xingzi was dumbstruck. He stuttered even more, Daoist knows which family head. I don't know any family head. Xiao Hua smiled and said, this literary star is I's good friend. Don't worry. When the time comes, not only a literary star, but also a literary saint and great grandmaster. I will give you hundreds of them. Let's see if the Gusu family dares to not agree. Oh, right. Do you still want the immortal soldiers of the Immortal Palace to open the way for you? I'll ask the Immortal Palace's true monarch to send 100,000 over. How about that? Chapter 44:15. All right. Zhai Xingzi was ecstatic to the point of being dumbstruck, and he could only nod his head vigorously. He really didn't dare to believe Xiao Hua's words, but the problem was that Xiao Hua was a grand ascension stage human race cultivator, so how could he be joking around with him? Cough cough. Zhong Daoran coughed and said with a smile, forget about the immortal army from the Immortal Palace, we are Daoist cultivators. Even though Daoist is already a human Mahayana realm cultivator, Confucian cultivators are still the rulers of the Hidden Immortal Continent. If Daoist when Xing comes out, the Gusu family will have some face, so there's no need to cause any trouble. That's right. Zhai Xingzi came to his senses and hurriedly said, Daoist when is a Daoist Mahayana realm cultivator, so it's best if you don't attract the attention of the Immortal Palace. When we return to the Hidden Immortal Continent, we'll deal with this matter. Xiao Hua was also overjoyed, and he said, Confucian cultivators have 4 joys in life, which are rain after a long drought, meeting an old friend in a foreign land, the wedding night, and the nomination for the Golden Role. Today, we've met in a foreign land, and in the future, Daoist Zhai Xingzi, this is the most joys in life. Ha ha, that's right, That's right. Zhong Daoran and Zun Kong both smiled as they congratulated star-plucking child. Meanwhile, Xiao Hua's smile was filled with bitterness. He very naturally thought of Fairy Jing, a woman who had also drunk the water of forgetfulness, and also surpassed the water of forgetfulness through bitter thinking. Her experience was similar to Gusu Chodi's, but the ending was also completely different. Fellow Taoists, please wait on the side. When we return to the hidden immortal continent, I will accompany you for a chat. Xiao Hua looked into the distance and saw that the two groups of Fortune Gate's disciples had yet to appear, but their killing intent had already soared to the sky, spreading in all directions. Xiao Hua smiled and said to Zhai Xingzi and the others, "Yes." The three of them didn't dare to say anything, and they surrounded Gusu Chodi, waiting for the Fortune Gate's army to return. After half a cup of tea's time, killing intent surged like a tidal wave, and the 200,000-strong army had already appeared. At the front of the army, 2 lightning boats flew over. When they were 100 li away from Xiao Hua, they stopped, and 2 groups of people flew down from the boats. Xiao Hua's gaze swept over the crowd, and at the same time, there was a smile on his face, but at the same time, there was surprise in his eyes. This was because Ying Po and his clansmen from the Luori Merchant Union flew down from the left lightning ship while Xiong Yi, His Highness Lan, Daoist Master Qing Shu, Venerable Master Fan Tian, Ao Zhantian, Shu Tingzi, and the others flew down from the right lightning ship. When Ying Po saw Xiong Yi flying out, he deliberately slowed down to let Xiong Yi and the others greet Xiao Hua first. Before he could even get close, Royal Highness Lan fell to his knees with tears streaming down his face. "Master, this disciple deserves to die. Please punish this disciple." Xiao Hua was shocked. He raised his hand and grabbed Royal Highness Lan from a distance. Royal Highness Lan felt a flash in front of his eyes. He didn't feel anything at all. His figure had already appeared in front of Xiao Hua. His heart couldn't help but tighten. "What's wrong?" Xiao Hua hurriedly asked. "Did something big happen?" "Master." Xiong Yi also hurriedly flew over, but he was still far away from Xiao Hua. He also shouted, "This disciple also deserves to die. Master, please punish me." "Oh, what's going on?" Xiao Hua had a bad feeling in his heart. This disciple is incompetent. Xiong Yi glanced at the pale-faced Royal Highness Lan and sighed inwardly. He rushed to say, "This disciple led close to 30,000 disciples to Bai Qingyu to save Master. But, on the way, we lost close to 40%. In this grand array, we lost another 10%. Close to half of the disciples have fallen. This disciple asks Master to punish him." Xiao Hua raised his head and looked up at the sky. His eyes were filled with grief. He had already mentally prepared himself for this outcome. After all, the Fortune Gate's disciples in the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range couldn't be compared to the Fortune Gate's disciples in the Shenhua continent. The difference in strength was too great. At most, they were in the Golden Core realm. Coming to the 1,000 demonic sacred grounds, they weren't even enough to fill the gaps between the demonic beast race's teeth. However, the loyalty of these Fortune Gate's disciples in the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range wasn't any worse than the Fortune Gate's disciples in the Shenhua continent. They relied on these tens of thousands of disciples to rush to Bai Qingyu. Xiao Hua had already used the Netherworld Origin Force to investigate. He could absorb souls that could be absorbed into the yin side of the Netherworld, regardless of whether they were from the demonic beast race or the human race. However, according to Xiong Yi, 40% of the disciples had died on the way to Bai Qingyu. Their souls had most likely entered the Netherworld. Xiao Hua couldn't find them at all. Even if Xiao Hua wanted to arrange for them to re-enter the Fortune Gate, he couldn't. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Xiao Hua retracted his gaze and looked at Prince Lan. He asked, "What crime did you commit?" This disciple didn't protect junior brother Chang Yu well. On the way to Bai Qingyu, junior brother Chang Yu encountered the demonic beast race. In order to save this disciple, junior brother Chang Yu perished together with the demonic beast race. Prince Lan didn't dare to raise his head. His upper body was prostrated in midair as he wept. Sigh. Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of air. He couldn't believe this news. After all, He had taken in so many disciples, and none of them had died. Even during the war with the devil race in the ruins, Yuan and the others didn't suffer such a tragedy. Damn it! Hearing this grievous news, Xiao Hua was furious. He regretted letting Bai Qingyu, Shrouding Sky Ridge, and Ancient Bell Mountain go. Tell me the cause of this matter in full detail. Xiao Hua gritted his teeth and said word by word. Prince Lan complied and recounted the matter once again. It was exactly the same as what he had told Xiong Yi. Hearing this, Xiao Hua released his divine sense and looked in that direction. It was a pity that his battle with Bai Xian had involved too much area. The place where Chang Yu had died had long since disappeared. He couldn't find any traces at all. After Master left, junior brother Chang Yu cultivated diligently. Before he died, he was already an early nascent soul cultivator. Deep sorrow appeared on Xiong Yi's face. When he came to Bai Qingyu this time, this disciple and junior brother Lan advised him not to come. We told him to stay at the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range with senior brother Li Xiong. After all, the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm is too dangerous and his strength is still shallow. But he said that Master had given him a new life. Even if he dies, he wants to die in front of Master. Sigh. Hearing this, Xiao Hua felt as if a knife was being twisted in his heart. To be honest, his feelings for Chang Yu and Wu Tian were not as deep as Xiong Yi, Prince Lan, and Li Xiong. It was even more incomparable to Liu Yi and the other disciples. However, it was these disciples who knew how to repay the kindness of a drop of water with a gushing spring. They knew how to be grateful. They knew that they would die if they came to Bai Qingyu, but they still rushed to meet their deaths. How could he repay their gratitude? Even if he had massacred Bai Qingyu and killed nearly 1 million demons, the lives of his disciples could not be redeemed. All of a sudden, Xiao Hua's heart was filled with regret. He regretted all the cover-up he had done in order to uncover the mastermind. If he had stood out earlier, interrogated Shui Mingzi earlier, and rushed to Bai Qingyu earlier, Chang Yu would not have died. Nearly half of the Fortune Gate's disciples on the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range would not have died. Daoist Master Xiao, please restrain your grief. Seeing Xiao Hua's complicated expression, Daoist Master Qing Shu hurried forward and bowed. Although your sect's disciples have suffered some casualties, they died defending Daoist Master's reputation. They died in the battle with the demons. Their deaths are the victory of our human race, the price of our human race's dignity. Their deaths are great. Their deaths will certainly be recorded in the annals of history. When our Dao Gate rises in the future, their deaths will be recited by thousands of generations of Dao Gate's disciples. Ari. Hearing Daoist Master Qing Shu's words, Xiao Hua nodded slightly. He also understood in his heart that it was too late to say anything now. Regret was useless. Moreover, regardless of whether he chose to cover it up or not, many things would still happen. Things in the world would never go according to one's thoughts. It was impossible for his disciples to never die. Wait for me to rise. Xiao Hua waved his hand to let Xiong Yi and Prince Lan rise. He said solemnly, none of you did anything wrong. What was wrong was the ambition and selfish desires of some people. You were too weak to resist the schemes of others. It was inevitable that you had to pay some price. Yes, Master. Xiong Yi stood up, still full of guilt. Although Prince Lan's face was sad, he was happy in his heart. How is the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range? Xiao Hua asked again. Xiong Yi said, when we came here, there was nothing wrong. However, there are too many eyes and ears in the Immortal Palace. Disciples trading with the Luo Yi Merchant Union and going out for training will fall into the Immortal Palace's eyes and ears. According to the latest news from the Luo Yi Merchant Union, the Immortal Palace might be going on a crusade against the Soaring Dragon Mountain Rain. Master, we have to hurry back. Prince Lan hurriedly advised, with these 200,000 Fortune Gate disciples, we won't be afraid of the Immortal Palace's crusade in the future. Don't worry. Xiao Hua nodded and said, Wang Bianfei, Yu Zhongquan, and the others have already brought a group of disciples back to the Soaring Dragon Mountain Rain. With them there, the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range will be safe. Moreover, times have changed. The Immortal Palace, Might not go on a crusade against the soaring Dragon Mountain range. That's good. Xiongyi raised his eyebrows and said, this disciple was worried that senior brother Li Xiong would be unable to support himself in the Fortune Gate Dao Palace. After Xiongyi finished speaking, Prince Lan pointed at Daoist Master Qing Shu and said, Master, this is Daoist Master Qing Shu. Master should know them. They came to Bai Qingyu to rescue Master under the Grand Mist Ancestor's orders. However, they did not send a message to us and only arrived just before the battle began. It's fine. It's better to have a heart than not. It's better to come than not. Xiao Hua forced a smile and said, this Xiao thanks the Grand Mist Ancestor for his concern. Daoist Qing Shu, please bring this Xiao's gratitude back. Yes, this junior will definitely do so. Daoist Master Qing Shu was very happy to see Xiao Hua still calling him Daoist. He bowed and said, when this junior met senior for the first time, I already said that the ancestor has made it his mission to revitalize the Dao sect. He will treat all Dao sect's cultivators as his disciples. When this junior reported senior's matter to the ancestor attached great importance to it. Later, didn't this junior pay a special visit to senior? This time, when the ancestor heard that senior was in trouble, he didn't hesitate and prepared to come personally. However, many of the ancestor's friends dissuaded him. They believed that if the ancestor showed himself, he would be attacked by the Immortal Palace and the Lightning Sound Temple. This was not appropriate for the Dao sect in the Three Continent. Under their death persuasion, the ancestor had no choice but to give up his original plan. That's why he sent I and a dozen other Daoists to rescue senior. Chapter 44:16. At this point, Daoist Master Qing Shu's face was filled with surprise. He looked at Xiao Hua and asked tentatively, who knew? Senior's cultivation was actually so deep. Although we came, we couldn't help senior at all. Moreover, we had to rely on senior's disciples to save us. Oh, right, senior is probably a tribulation-passing cultivator of our human race now, right? Xiao Hua naturally understood that the tribulation Daoist Master Qing Shu mentioned was different from the one on Dawn Rain mainland. He pondered for a moment and didn't hide it. He smiled and said, I was lucky enough to have reached the Grand Ascension stage. Daoist Master Qing Shu had met Xiao Hua 200 years ago and had some understanding of Xiao Hua's strength. He couldn't believe that Xiao Hua had surpassed him by so much in just a few hundred years. Moreover, he had only met Xiao Hua once before following the Fortune Gate disciples to attack the heaven-concealing ridge and ancient Bell Mountain. The highest cultivation among the Fortune Gate disciples was close to the lower 8th grade. Therefore, Daoist Master Qing Shu guessed that Xiao Hua was a tribulation-passing cultivator. However, he still underestimated Xiao Hua's strength. He couldn't help but exclaim, How is this possible? At this point, he immediately realized that he had been rude and quickly bowed. Senior, please don't blame me. Junior was just too surprised. Junior didn't expect Senior's cultivation to have reached the heavens. Don't blame me, don't blame me. You and I are old acquaintances. No wonder you are surprised. Xiao Hua was already numb to this kind of surprise. He smiled and waved his hand. He looked at Master Heaven Flipping Master and said, These fellow Daoists are unfamiliar, Ayo. Daoist Master Qing Shu slapped his forehead and said with a smile, I was just thinking about talking to Senior. I was so surprised by the miracle of Senior's cultivation progress that I forgot to introduce him. He is also a disciple of Ancestor. His name is Master Heaven Flipping Master. This is, before he could finish, Xiao Hua smiled and said, So you are Master Heaven Flipping Master. This Xiao has heard of your name for a long time, but I have never seen you before. Xiao Hua's words sounded like a compliment, but in fact, there was a reason for it. That year on the Great Snow Mountain, he met Xin Xin, who had disguised herself as Xin Xin, and the little monk Si Hui, who was the physical body of Manjushri Bodhisattva of Namo Great Wisdom, who had yet to attain fruition. They even went to look for Fantian Venerable together. It was at Fantian Venerable's abode that Xiao Hua and the others met Jiyu Zhen, the Buddhist sect's protector. Master Heaven Flipping Master didn't know these secrets. Junior's Heaven Flipping Master greets Senior. Senior, junior's cultivation. How can junior compare with senior's cultivation with senior? Hee hee. Xiao Hua smiled and nodded. He then met with the other cultivators of the Dao sect. In the end, Daoist Qing Shu said respectfully, Senior, before we came here, the ancestor said that if we succeed in the rescue, we must invite Senior to see the ancestor. Now, Junior doesn't dare to ask Senior to go personally, but I hope Senior can agree. Once we return, we will report to Ancestor and ask Ancestor to choose a time and place to meet Senior. Now, Senior and Ancestor are the only supreme cultivators in our Dao sect. Both seniors are the pillars of our Dao sect. The revival of our Dao sect will fall on the shoulders of both seniors. Juniors are looking forward to the two seniors joining hands. Xiao Hua had already seen the face of the Grand Mist Ancestor when he had just arrived in the Three Mainlands. He wasn't interested in this kind of ugly cultivator, even if this cultivator had taken it upon himself to revive the Dao sect. However, Huang Xiaolong was clear that he could avoid meeting the Grand Mist Ancestor when his cultivation was still low. Now that his cultivation was on par with the Grand Mist Ancestor, he was bound to meet the Grand Mist Ancestor. Since that was the case, Xiao Hua was looking forward to seeing Grand Mist Ancestor's expression when they met. Yen, you can report this to fellow Daoist Grand Miss. Xiao Hua smiled and said, when we return to the hidden immortal mainland, you can arrange the meeting with Xiong Yi. Many thanks, Senior. Daoist Master Qing Shu was happy to hear Xiao Hua agree. Since that's the case, we will take our leave and report this to Ancestor. There's no need to rush. We will go together. Xiao Hua smiled and said, after all, there are many demons in the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm. Bai Qingyu's actions will definitely attract the attention of many demon kings. If you go back alone, there will be many obstructions. Then we will respectfully accept. We will borrow Senior's reputation to avoid some dangers. Daoist Master Qing Shu said with a smile, Junior will not disturb Senior. Junior will go and talk to fellow Daoist Xiong Yi and fellow Daoist Lan about future matters. Xiao Hua agreed with a smile and left Xiong Yi and Lan with Daoist Master Qing Shu and Venerable Master Qing Shu. Seeing that there was no one in front of Xiao Hua, Ao Zhantian hurriedly brought Shu Tingzi and the other cultivators over. Before they even got close, Ao Zhantian said respectfully, Junior greets Master Xiao. Shu Tingzi panicked and said in a low voice, Junior didn't know that Senior was Yulong. Please forgive Junior for offending you along the way. Po Hong and the other cultivators apologized like Shu Tingzi. They were all terrified. After all, they had said many bad things about Ao Yi. However, Shu Tingzi was more remorseful than panic, especially when he heard Ao Zhantian call Xiao Hua Master Xiao. Previously, at Yaotai Mountain, Xiao Hua wanted to take him as his disciple because of Shu Tingzi's help. Unfortunately, Shu Tingzi was too cautious and was afraid that Xiao Hua's power would bring disaster to him. Now, Shu Tingzi was still at the mid-nascent soul stage, but Xiao Hua was no longer at the 5th stage. How could a human Mahayana realm cultivator accept a mid-nascent soul stage cultivator as his disciple? Especially when this cultivator had rejected him directly. At this moment, Shu Tingzi wished he could go back 200 years and kneel in front of Xiao Hua and acknowledge him as his master. Xiao Hua naturally wouldn't make things difficult for these juniors. He smiled and helped Shu Tingzi and the others up. What happened in the past is already in the past. Don't mind it too much. If I wasn't with you all, I wouldn't have known about Shui Ming's evil intentions. Therefore, not only are you all not at fault, you all have contributed greatly. Moreover, I'm very happy that you all came to Bai Qingyu. From today onwards, all of your previous vows are null and void. Po Hong and the others were even more disappointed. They wanted to serve Xiao Hua for another 1,000 years. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua no longer cared about the loyalty of these nascent soul stage cultivators. Actually, Po Hong and the others wanted to mention serving Xiao Hua, but they didn't expect Xiao Hua to block their path before they could even speak. Even if they wanted to speak again, it was impossible. Many thanks, Senior. Although Po Hong and the others thanked him, their tone was filled with disappointment. Just as they were about to fly to the side, Xiao Hua suddenly smiled and said, I already know that you all wanted to come to Bai Qingyu to rescue me. Now that my fortune gate wants to spread its influence on the hidden immortal mainland, we need a lot of disciples. If you are willing, you can find a suitable master among my fortune gate disciples. As long as you find one, I will let them accept you as their disciples. How about it? Many thanks, Senior. Po Hong and the others thanked him again. This time, their tone was filled with ecstasy. Xiao Hua was already a grand ascension stage cultivator. How bad could his disciples be? Ao Zhantian and Xu Tingzi, stay behind. The rest of you can go first. After I make arrangements, you all will return to the hidden immortal mainland with the Fortune Gate disciples. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said. Hearing Xiao Hua's words, Xu Tingzi's heart was filled with joy. After Po Hong and the others left, Ao Zhantian frowned and said, Master Xiao, you saw what these cultivators did. They colluded with Xue Mingzi. Although they don't have any intention of harming Master Xiao, I still feel that they are unreliable. Xiao Hua nodded and smiled. I understand. I was just about to ask you, how did you deal with Xue Mingzi's matter? Of course, I killed him, Ao Zhantian said without hesitation. That bastard colluded with the ancient Bell Mountain's demonic beasts. Not only did he want to harm Master Xiao, he also coveted the Dao Gate's forces on the hidden immortal mainland. If I don't kill him, who else should I kill? Other than him? Xiao Hua smiled and said, it seems like there are still 4 cultivators missing. Those 4 have already been persuaded by Xue Mingzi and are preparing to join the ancient Bell Mountain. When they reach Bai Qingyu, they will attack Master Xiao and nullify the blood oath they made. Ao Zhantian explained. As for the rest, they are still hesitating, so I didn't make a move. Isn't that the case? Xiao Hua smiled. When faced with a life-threatening situation, anyone would have selfish thoughts. As long as they still have a conscience in their hearts, I feel that they can still be safe. Moreover, under this kind of test, I feel that I have let down the Fortune Gate's disciples and all of you, not to mention them. What's the harm in giving them another chance? Ari, Senior is too kind. Ao Zhantian smiled bitterly. This junior can't do such a thing. Junior likes to be decisive when killing, and doesn't want to be sloppy. As long as there's an opportunity to make a move, I will immediately make a move. That's good. Xiao Hua smiled. If I can't do it, I'll leave it to you. No problem. Ao Zhantian didn't think much about Xiao Hua's words and casually agreed. However, just as he finished speaking, he suddenly understood something. He looked at Xiao Hua and couldn't believe his ears. When Xiao Hua nodded slightly, he turned around and knelt in the air. He kowtowed and said, Di. Disciple Ao Zhantian greets Master. Get up. After Ao Zhantian kowtowed 9 times, Xiao Hua helped Ao Zhantian up and said, Master has already taught you the Dao Gate's magic arts. Moreover, you came to Bai Qingyu to rescue Master, and you didn't forget your original intentions in the face of Xue Mingzi's temptation. Master naturally won't disappoint you. In the future, you have to deal with the Fortune Gate's affairs with Xiong Yi, Prince Lan, and the others. Do more things that Master doesn't like to do. Yes, Master, disciple understands. Rest assured. Ao Zhantian had always called Xiao Hua Master Xiao and had long regarded Xiao Hua as his master. Now that his dream had come true, he couldn't stop smiling. Congratulations, Senior Ao. Xu Tingzi's mouth was filled with bitterness as he cupped his fists and congratulated Xiao Hua. Chapter 44:17. F***ck. Ao Zhantian was overjoyed. When he saw Xu Tingzi congratulating him, he scolded Xu Tingzi, Master asked you to stay, but didn't you follow me and fight Xue Mingzi without any regard for your life? Why don't you understand what Master means? Do you still need Master to say it out loud? Hurry up and thank Master. Ao Zhantian's words struck Xu Tingzi like a bolt of lightning. He looked at Xiao Hua in a daze and opened his mouth. He wanted to ask if Ao Zhantian was telling the truth, but he couldn't say anything. Pfff. Ao Zhantian kicked Xu Tingzi's leg, and Xu Tingzi's knees went soft, and he fell to his knees. Only then did he come to his senses. He cried and kowtowed, "Disciple Shu Tingzi greets Master. I was blind and missed the opportunity. Disciple thanks Master for not abandoning me." Similarly, after Shu Tingzi kowtowed 9 times, Xiao Hua helped him up and said with a smile, "What's lost is lost. It will never return. If you hadn't stood out from the crowd that day, Master definitely wouldn't have given you another chance. However, since you've done it, the opportunity has come. Master won't say anything else. From now on, follow Ao Zhantian and take care of the affairs of the Fortune Gate." "Yes, Master." Disciple understands. Shu Tingzi was overjoyed but also a little ashamed. After replying, he followed Ao Zhantian to greet Xiong Yi and the other Fortune Gate disciples. Xiong Yi and the others saw Ao Zhantian and Shu Tingzi formally acknowledging Xiao Hua as master, and they all congratulated them with smiles. Ying Po waited for a while, but no one came forward. Xiao Hua personally sent a voice transmission, "Fellow immortal Ying Po, why aren't you coming over?" Only then did Ying Po rush over with a few elders. He bowed and said, "Junior greets Master Xiao. Wait for me." Xiao Hua looked at Ying Po's respectful attitude and the many elders behind him. He smiled and said, "I'm still the same old Xiao. It's just that I'm stronger now. This is more beneficial for the cooperation between the Fortune Gate and the Fortune Gate. You don't need to think too much. Yes, Teacher Xiao will forever be our clan's Teacher Xiao." Ying Po nodded. "No matter what realm you are at." Finished speaking, Ying Po hurriedly took out a beast skin and handed it to Xiao Hua. "Master Xiao, Junior has received news that the Immortal Palace may be going on a punitive expedition to the Soaring Dragon mountain range in the near future. Previously in the war, Junior has already informed Xiong Yi. However, it was too chaotic at that time, so I couldn't explain it clearly. This is the beast skin used to transmit the message. Senior, please check it carefully. Send these Fortune Gate disciples back. If the news is true, the Soaring Dragon mountain range's Fortune Gate disciples will suffer more losses." Xiao Hua was very happy to see that Ying Po did not say anything and hurriedly told him about the Soaring Dragon mountain range. He took the animal skin and looked at it carefully. After calculating the time, he knew that it was not long before he left the Great Snow Mountain Range. At that time, Sun Jian had not left the Shenhua continent. At this time, if there were no accidents, Sun Jian should have returned to the Immortal Palace. According to Sun Jian's knowledge, he must have reported this matter to the Immortal Emperor. How could the Immortal Emperor hastily send troops to the Soaring Dragon mountain range? Therefore, Xiao Hua smiled and said, "This news was sent a long time ago. If the Immortal Palace had received the latest news from our Fortune Gate, they might not be in such a hurry to send troops to the Soaring Dragon mountain range. Moreover, 1 day in the Immortal Palace is equivalent to 1 year on the surface. Once this news travels back and forth between the Immortal Palace and the so-called court discussion, there won't be any results for several years. At that time, we would have already returned to the Soaring Dragon mountain range. Who would be afraid of them?" Teacher Xiao is right. Ying Po nodded. Junior is afraid that the Immortal Palace would not have received the exact news and send troops rashly. The Soaring Dragon mountain range's troops are insufficient at this time, which would make us regret it. Before this Xiao came to the Thousand Demons Sacred Domain, I had already sent my disciples back to the Soaring Dragon mountain range. Xiao Hua smiled. With their cultivation of 7th or 8th grade essence force, they won't have any pressure to deal with those immortal soldiers and immortal generals. When Ying Po heard that Xiao Hua's disciples had cultivation of 8th grade essence force, a trace of envy appeared in his eyes. He smiled apologetically. "If that is the case, then Junior is relieved. Junior will send my clansmen back to gather information so that I can inform Teacher Xiao of the latest situation. This matter is not urgent." Xiao Hua smiled and waved his hand, asking, "Ying Po, how many of your people died this time?" "All right, Teacher Xiao knows." Ying Po smiled apologetically. "My clan is of the demon race, so coming to Bai Qingyu is not considered difficult. However, we lost 10% of our people when fighting under Bai Qingyu's command, which is 100 times better than what we expected. When you came to Bai Qingyu, did you not plan to go back?" Xiao Hua asked. Ying Po nodded. "I won't hide this matter from Teacher Xiao. What the other clansmen thought, Junior is like this. The matters of the Endless Merchant Union have already been handed over to others, but the position of Patriarch has not been pushed out.
Oh, why?
Xiao Hua was startled and asked curiously. Ying Po said proudly, because this time, Junior is leading 6,000 clansmen. If all of them are unable to return, my clan will probably not exist in the 3 continents. Junior can choose whether or not to take the position of Patriarch. Xiao Hua's heart trembled, and he bowed, fellow immortal, this Xiao will definitely repay you for your kindness. When the human Grand Ascension stage expert bowed, Ying Po and the other elders' knees went soft, and they almost fell to their knees. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over them and supported them. Ying Po could only cry out, Teacher Xiao has done a lot for my clan. If it weren't for Teacher Xiao, my clan and the Endless Merchant Union would not exist. My clan is willing to live and die with Teacher Xiao. Good, in that case, my Fortune Gate and the Endless Merchant Union have formed a life and death alliance. Xiao Hua raised his right hand and placed it in front of Ying Po. As long as my Fortune Gate exists, the Endless Merchant Union exists. Ying Po's eyes lit up, and he slowly raised his right claw. There was still a lot of mana on his right claw, and it shone brightly in the night sky. Ying Po said, My Endless Merchant Union is willing to form a life and death alliance with the Fortune Gate. I, Ying Po, represent the Endless Merchant Union and swear that as long as my Endless Merchant Union exists, the Fortune Gate exists. The human Grand Ascension stage expert's hand and the demonic beast's claw collided. Due to the presence of the mana, there wasn't much of a sound when they clapped hands. However, this was a promise that was as solid as gold, and a sincere alliance was formed before everyone's eyes. Ying Po, thank your clansmen on my behalf. We're now allies, and if there's a chance in the future, we'll meet again at the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. If there's anything in the Thousand Beast Holy Realm, feel free to tell Xiong Yi or Fu Juan. Xiao Hua smiled, and said, As for other matters, we'll discuss them in detail after we return to the hidden immortal continent. I'm confident that I can help you build the Endless Merchant Union into a business union that's even more powerful than the Star-Plucking Tower. Yes, Junior understands. Junior thanks Teacher Xiao. Ying Po was ecstatic, and he bowed deeply to express his gratitude. He knew that with the support of Xiao Hua, a Grand Ascension stage human cultivator, and the Fortune Gate, an unprecedented Daoist sect, how could the trade union not surpass the Star-Plucking Pavilion? Of course, Ying Po also understood that the Endless Stream Merchant Union had long been tied to the Fortune Gate. If Xiao Hua and the Fortune Gate were to be attacked by Confucian cultivators and Buddhist sects, or if the ancient immortals and Buddhas joined forces to destroy the Tao, then his Endless Stream Merchant Union would not be able to survive. However, how bad could that outcome be compared to what he had prepared for the day before? All of you, go rest on the lightning boat. Xiao Hua helped Ying Po up with a smile, and said, We'll return to the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range right away. Yes. Ying Po had just gotten up when he suddenly thought of something, and he hurriedly took out a universal bracelet. After searching through it for a moment, he took out a jade-eye bracelet and respectfully handed it to Xiao Hua, and said, Teacher Xiao, there's something that Junior almost forgot. It's been over 200 years, and if Teacher Xiao hadn't mentioned the Star-Plucking Tower, Junior would have really forgotten about it.
Oh,
what's the matter? Xiao Hua was taken aback, and he took the jade-eye bracelet, but didn't immediately examine it. All right, I'll let Teacher Xiao know. Ying Po recalled a little and answered, that year, after Teacher Xiao left the Feather Spirit Bay, about 10 days later, a Confucian cultivator came to my Yazi auction to find Teacher Xiao. Junior was preparing for the auction, so I ignored him and pretended that I didn't know Teacher Xiao. That Confucian cultivator didn't say much, and only said that he came from the Star-Plucking Tower, and that he had seen Teacher Xiao in the Star-Plucking Tower, and was an old acquaintance of Teacher Xiao. Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. He naturally knew that Confucian cultivator must be the mysterious Professor Jushan Jundu, so he smiled and asked, Did that Confucian cultivator leave his name? No. Ying Po shook his head, and said, Junior not only doesn't know his name, but now that I think about it, it seems that Junior can't remember his appearance. If Junior hadn't seen Teacher Xiao, Junior really wouldn't have remembered this matter. What else did he say? Xiao Hua was even more certain in his heart, and asked, "You couldn't have also forgotten, right?" "No." Ying Po's eyes revealed surprise. Junior remembers everything he said even more clearly. He gave this jade eye bracelet to Junior, and said that Junior must give it to teacher Xiao. He also said that this matter is very important to him. Oh, right. He also asked Junior to say something to teacher Xiao. What is it? Xiao Hua's brows were tightly knitted, and he was rather puzzled. This is your last chance, and you are his only hope. Ying Po looked at Xiao Hua, and said each word clearly. His tone was very serious, as if Dushan Jun had said it to Xiao Hua face to face. Hiss. Xiao Hua was shocked, and hurriedly asked, "Ying Po, do you know about the Star Moon Palace?" "I know." Ying Po nodded. This kind of ancient ruin is very famous in the 3 continents. How could Junior not know? At this point, Ying Po somewhat understood, and said with a smile, "Is Senior talking about the appearance of the Star Moon Palace this time?" Damn it. Xiao Hua already knew what was recorded in the Jade Eye bracelet, and he was also very sure that the person who went to the Luoyi Merchant Union to look for him was undoubtedly Dushan Jun. He slightly thought about it, and then secretly cursed. Previously at the star-plucking tower in Yuling Bay, Zhong Qiao once said that the Star Moon Palace might open within 200 years. However, this is only a guess, perhaps 2,000 years is also possible. Looks like the Star Moon Palace hasn't opened yet. Dushan Jun is urging me to go to the Star Moon Palace to keep the appointment. Chapter 44:18. As expected, Ying Po continued, although the Star Moon Palace is an ancient ruin that many humans and demons in the 3 continents know about, the news of the Star Moon Palace's appearance is extremely secretive. Everyone wants to snatch the right to enter the Star Moon Palace. Everyone wants to search for opportunities in the Star Moon Palace. Once any human or demon obtains the news, they won't tell anyone else. It is only in the recent decades that the continuous merchant union has grown bigger and bigger, and the information it has obtained has also increased. This junior is qualified to know some of the Star Moon Palace's secret. However, even so, Junior only knows that the Star Moon Palace may appear in the Thousand Demons Sacred Territory's easternmost region in a few months. As for the specific location and time, Junior is not particularly clear. Hearing this, Xiao Hua hesitated. He had thought that the Star Moon Palace had opened long ago, so he had thrown the matter of the Star Moon Palace to the back of his mind. According to his plan, he was prepared to bring the 200,000 Fortune Gate disciples back to the hidden immortal mainland. However, the Star Moon Palace was about to open, and he had previously made an agreement with Doshan Jun to follow him into the Star Moon Palace. Thus, he had no choice but to give up on returning to the hidden immortal mainland and head to the Thousand Demons Sacred Territory's easternmost region. Of course, Xiao Hua was hesitant because he had returned to the 3 continents in a high-profile manner. First, he had defeated the 4 Sea Dragon Kings and destroyed the Southern Sea Dragon Palace. Then, he had defeated the demonic beast race's 3 great sages and massacred by Qingyu. This would definitely attract the attention of the Immortal Palace. He could not guarantee that Sun Wu would be able to persuade the Immortal Emperor to not attack the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. If he went to the Star Moon Palace, the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range might be destroyed. As for whether he would go to the Star Moon Palace, he did not hesitate at all. This was because Doshan Jun's help to him was simply too great. Not to mention the lightning cultivation method, not to mention the Crimson Infant technique, just the Darkness Breaking Pill, Void Bearing Pill, Lotus Connecting Pill, and Jade Heaven Pill that Doshan Jun had given Xiao Hua in the Stargazing Pavilion in Yuling Bay, as well as the pill formulas that they had refined, had played an extremely crucial role in Xiao Hua's cultivation. The Darkness Breaking Pill was a necessary pill to break through the bottleneck of the nascent soul realm and enter the spirit severing realm. The Void Bearing Pill was used to break through to the Void Refinement realm, the Lotus Connecting Pill was used to break through to the Unity realm, and the Jade Heaven Pill was used to break through to the Ma Ascension realm. Without these medicinal pills, Xiao Hua would have wasted the 20,000 years in the heavenly prison, and it would be impossible for him to reach the Darching stage at this time. Moreover, Do Shan had already made it clear that he would not let Xiao Hua do anything that went against Xiao Hua's conscience. In fact, the most reassuring thing for Xiao Hua was that Do Shanjuan's words had revealed some secrets. The Grand Mist Ancestor, who was currently in the limelight, seemed to have received Do Shanjuan's help, and the Grand Mist Ancestor did not repay Do Shanjun in the end. Even so, Do Shanjun did not withdraw his help to the Grand Mist Ancestor, nor did he punish the Grand Mist Ancestor. Do Shanjun was so magnanimous, presumably, he wouldn't have any schemes against Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua was also willing to work for such a person. In particular, the words that Do Shanjun asked Yingbo to bring to Xiao Hua caused Xiao Hua's hesitation to quickly turn into a decision. Xiao Hua understood that Do Shanjun's remarkable abilities far exceeded his imagination. Even though he was already a Darching stage cultivator, he still had not completely comprehended the jade slip that Do Shanjun gave him. That Crimson Infant technique still had a large part of it that he did not understand. Previously, when Xiao Hua was in the spirit severing stage, he might not have understood, but now that he was a supreme cultivator of the three mainlands, how could he not know that this Crimson Infant technique was definitely not a cultivation technique from the cultivation world? In other words, Do Shanjun was definitely not a cultivator from the cultivation world. He must have come from the upper realm. Of course, whether this upper realm was the ruins or the desolate continent that Xiao Hua had been to before, Xiao Hua did not know. Since that was the case, Xiao Hua could infer that if there were no rules of the three mainlands, Do Shanjun's strength would far surpass his by a lot. Xiao Hua himself knew how to predict the future, and he would have some enlightenment on a whim. Then Do Shanjun would definitely have an even more mysterious technique to divine the future. In that case, Do Shanjun did not put that sentence in the jade eyes, and instead asked Yingpo to bring it to him. It meant that he wanted Xiao Hua to take it seriously. Xiao Hua even vaguely felt that the Do Shanjun from 200 years ago should have already divined that only Yingpo could bring the jade eyes to him 200 years later, which was why he paid a visit to Yingpo. Do Shanjun had already taken it seriously, and had already made it clear that this was his last chance, and Xiao Hua was also his only hope, so how could Xiao Hua not fulfill his promise? He. Xiao Hua made a decision, and then smiled as he thought, even if Sun Jian can't persuade Immortal Emperor Gaochen, isn't there still Xin Xin in the Immortal Palace? With such a big commotion in the Soaring Dragon Mountain range, how could she not know? With a little advice from her, Immortal Emperor Gaochen will definitely think about it, and he will definitely understand the importance of this Xiao to Confucian cultivators. The so-called true Confucian, isn't it to search for the 5 Qis unifications cultivation technique, to search for the foundation of Xiantian true Qi? At this time, Yingpo smiled and said, Master Xiao, in this junior's opinion, now that Master Xiao's cultivation is so profound, I'm afraid there's no need for you to go to the Star Moon Palace. On the other hand, the Fortune Gate's 7th and 8th grade disciples need to go to the Star Moon Palace to try their luck. Opportunities. Xiao Hua smiled. In terms of opportunities, could the Star Moon Palace compare to the ruins and the desolate continent? The opportunities that Liu Yi and the others had in the upper realm were many times more than the Star Moon Palace. Xiao Hua's own accumulation in the upper realm was only completed at the moment of life and death. Liu Yi and the others didn't know how long it would take for them to fully comprehend those accumulations, so there was really no need for them to go to the Star Moon Palace. Thus, Xiao Hua replied, it's a pity that they've already rushed back to the Soaring Dragon Mountain range, so I'm afraid they don't have time to go to the Star Moon Palace. That's true. Yingpo slapped his own forehead and smiled. The Soaring Dragon Mountain range might be attacked by the Immortal Palace. This junior forgot about that. Hearing this, Xiao Hua's heart moved, and he asked again, what about nascent soul cultivators? Are they suitable to go to the Star Moon Palace? Of course they're suitable. Yingpo smiled and said, the 7th or 8th grade essence force that this junior mentioned in the previous 3 continents referred to the Confucian cultivators and the demonic beast race. How could there be 7th or 8th grade essence force cultivators in the Dao sect? Only 3rd or 4th grade essence force cultivators would go. It's just that there are very few Dao sect cultivators who know this kind of secret information. All right. Xiao Hua nodded and said, ask the elders in the clan to return to the Thunder Ship first. I have something to tell you. Seeing that Xiao Hua had something to entrust to him, Ying Po was extremely happy and led the elders back to the Thunder Ship. After Ying Po left, Xiao Hua asked Xiong Yi, Prince Lan, Ao Zhantian, Shu Tingzi, and the other nascent soul disciples to come over. After thinking for a while, he also called Zhai Xingzi and the others over. Everyone didn't know what was going on, so they stood at the side and listened respectfully. After Ying Po returned, Xiao Hua spoke, I have something to discuss with all of you, and I want to hear your opinions. Xiong Yi was surprised. He glanced at Prince Lan and the others and said, Master, please speak. Zhai Xingzi exchanged glances with Zhong Daoran and nodded, Spiritual Master, please speak. Xiao Hua told them about the Star Moon Palace, and finally said, I'm preparing to head to the extreme east of the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm to explore the Star Moon Palace, and I want to ask your opinions if you're willing to go together. Of course, I don't need to say more about the dangers of the Star Moon Palace, all of you should know. Therefore, if I can protect all of you in the Star Moon Palace, I will definitely do so. If I can't, then it means that your fate hasn't arrived. Master. Prince Lan hurriedly asked, if we go to the Star Moon Palace, what about the Fortune Gate's disciples? Do you want Black Bear and the others to bring them back? No. Xiao Hua shook his head and said, Black Bear, White Lion, and Golden Eagle are from the demonic beast race. They can lead the troops for a while, but they can't bring them back. I'm planning to let Spiritual Master Jing Ting and Xian Songzi bring them back to the hidden immortal mainland, but they aren't good at commanding troops. I want to invite Ying Po of the Flowing Merchant Union to be the military advisor. Hearing Xiao Hua's words, Prince Lan's mind started to work. The current situation was obvious. The Fortune Gate's disciples that Xiao Hua brought back were much stronger than the Fortune Gate's disciples in the Soaring Dragon Mountain range. In the future, the Fortune Gate's overall situation would be controlled by these disciples. Furthermore, Xiao Hua wasn't interested in the sect's affairs. Everything would be left to the disciples to handle. Xiong Yi, Prince Lan, and Li Xiong's positions would definitely change in the future. The era where they could give orders to the Fortune Gate's people was gone forever. If they wanted to occupy a place in the Fortune Gate in the future, other than strength, they would need to command troops and wield authority. Prince Lan was well aware that no matter how great the opportunity in the Star Moon Palace was, it was impossible for him to advance to the 7th grade in one go. Even if he really reached the 7th grade, there were still Liu Yi, Yu Zhongquan, and the others above him. He wouldn't have any chance to stand out in the Fortune Gate. The path of cultivation was already bleak, so the only path left was to command troops and wield authority. Right now, in front of Prince Lan, it was an excellent opportunity. These 200,000 Fortune Gate's disciples didn't seem to be familiar with the three mainlands. Xiao Hua wasn't particularly familiar with and trusted the disciples at the 7th or 8th grade. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let Daoist Jingting and Xian Songzi lead the troops. He even let Ying Po from the demonic beast clan be his advisor. If Prince Lan took advantage of this opportunity to command troops, not only would he be able to build a good relationship with the disciples at the 7th or 8th grade, he would also be able to occupy a better position before the new Fortune Gate structure was clear. Moreover, Prince Lan was looking forward to the Immortal Palace's punitive expedition. He understood that the immortal soldiers and generals that could come on the expedition were at the 4th grade at most. In front of these 200,000 ferocious beasts, they were just appetizers. If he could command troops, it would be a great merit. When Xiong Yi returned from the Star Moon Palace, how could Xiong Yi be ranked ahead of him? It could be said that this was the opportunity that Prince Lan had been dreaming of. As for the opportunity in the Star Moon Palace, Prince Lan could see clearly. Not to mention the risks, the so-called opportunity might not be much better than the Fortune Gate. Not to mention, with the authority to command troops and speak in the sect's affairs, he would also have cultivation resources. In fact, he wouldn't have to worry about his cultivation speed falling behind others. Who knew, he might even surpass the disciples who had entered the Star Moon Palace in the future. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.